republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we had a public hearing for 247 Prospect Street, 274 Prospect Street that has asked for extension. So if you're here for that one tonight, sorry to disappoint you, we won't be talking about it. For the rest of the night, as far as public comment goes, we'll take public comment as it pertains to each individual agenda item. If you do have something to say, please make sure it's at the microphone and state your name and address for the record, and sign in, please. Just a reminder that our meeting tonight is being televised and recorded for posterity on YouTube. First order of business tonight was a pair of A&Rs that have been withdrawn. So we'll start with the continuation of beginning of an informational meeting for 339 Electric Ave.
Does any public comment not pertaining to agenda items?
I guess before we take that, does anyone have a public comment not related to a specific agenda item? Nope. Okay, so start with 339 Electric Avenue. These packets were scanned to the board. This is going to be the discussion of a modification to a site plan that we talked about earlier to talk about the signage and the proposed facade of the building for 339 Electric Avenue. Evening.
Good evening. Nick Pauling from GPR, the site engineer. Nice to see everyone again. As you mentioned, we were before you previous for the full development plan review. At that time, we left out the sign and also wanted to get some more information to you about the building facade. So at that time, you requested a rendering be done, which we supplied to you. So tonight we're here to kind of give you an update on the conditions of that original approval, just to bring you up to speed on everything. Can certainly go over the rendering with you and also go over the proposed freestanding pylon sign for the businesses. Just real quick, kind of the update on everything. Part of the development plan review, couple extra things you asked the applicant to do. Number 3 was to install an internal component to capture pet hair. We've met with the sewer department, actually got a connection permit and a change of use permit. Part of that condition is actually to insert a strainer within the down tube of any sink that will actually have grooming associated with it. Another request that you made is to pursue no parking in the street. That was pursued with the Department of Public Works. I've been informed that he discussed it with the Chief of Police, and based on what we proposed in their discussions, they felt that it was best to paint the area with no parking. So we also consider that kind of condition resolved, which we'll plan on doing while we construct and paint the parking area. The rest of them are all standard and subject to delivery hours, construction hours, things such as that. Nothing else has really changed, and we're not asking for any modifications for that. The proposed sign that we're in before you, we kind of went over during the original application. It's a internally lit freestanding pylon sign with each of the 3 proposed uses on it. And as you can see, the rendering that we proposed for the building was 2 renderings. One was actually a picture, and then another one was, even though it has a blue U to it, and it actually has a breakdown of the materials that were proposed, the vinyl clapboard, the split-faced masonry, things like that. So I know I went through with a quick update there for you, but I can certainly answer any specific questions the board might have after reviewing the application.
Thank you.
Good.
First, Adam, is there anything else we need to know? Nope. Okay. Any questions from the board members about the signage or suppose we can start with the building facade and materials.
Have there been any modifications to the facade?
No,
since the last one? Okay, it's just the
no,
renderings?
just trying to kind of more clearly show it to you guys and answer some of your questions.
Looks like it's a gray. Is that what you're going with?
Blue.
Blue.
I was told a primitive blue, but my man mind can't really comprehend or describe that to you.
I got it.
I asked if it was closer to the drapes of the flag, and they said neither.
Yeah.
But no, it would be a split stone face, kind of brownish, brown grays, field stone, blue clapboards, and then white trim and white roof.
Okay, and you've got vinyl up front and steel, is that right, in the back? Metal?
Yeah. On the side, the vertical
Siding?
side.
Yep.
Is that color intended to match the front of the building?
Yes.
So the question that we're trying to answer, I guess, is do we feel that it fits the character of the surrounding area? Does anyone feel that it does, doesn't? Ken, you look like you have something.
No one's going to speak up, so I will. Yeah, I do have a little bit of an issue with how it's going to fit into the surrounding area. Just the style is pretty, I don't know, industrial.
Commercial.
Industrial, I would say. And that is a challenge with steel buildings, and I guess if you go up the road a little ways, we're not that far off, we also have the styling of the self-storage, which isn't that really that different, but then you have Proctor's over there, which has a nice styling to it, which is quite a bit different than this, so.
Well, if I could interject, the existing building is actually the same orientation. It is 42 feet wide rather than 80 as proposed. It has the same orientation as far as ridge line. The existing building has a height of 16 feet. The proposed building is going to be 18 and a half. So as far as scale, we're pretty close. The biggest thing as far as scale that I'd like the board to remember is that the existing building is actually within the front setback. Okay, it's 25 feet to the front property line and 48 feet from the traveled edge of road. The proposed building is actually 59 feet from the front property line and 80 feet back from the proposed travelway. So yes, we're making the building wider. The existing building's been there for 60 years. As far as surrounding neighborhood, we're putting a building back that looks very similar to what's actually around. We look around, and as you mentioned, we are competing with self-storage up the road. I know next door has a development, saw the rendering. That looks pretty industrial as well, to use your word. So I feel that with the landscaping that's been proposed under the previous application that we're asking to modify tonight, coupled with the building's not Pepto-Bismol pink as it was for a number of years. That's actually one of the things that the applicant changed as soon as they bought the property. We're not proposing Pepto-Bismol pink, we're proposing blue, white, new building. So I can understand your concerns, but we feel that it's in the character of the neighborhood, which is the test of the regulations.
Yeah, I agree, that's also a little industrial. As far as the storage, self-storage, when we spoke about that one, they really have an intensive landscaping plan to go along with that one and kind of hide the building ideally. Not really trying to create a signboard like you are here. The only suggestion I kind of would have to not modify your design tremendously would be to enclose that front facade a little bit more and put maybe some columns out there to bring down the facade, but that kind of conflict with how you have your sign shown now, as far as making a signboard. Does anyone else have any feelings, suggestions?
As far as the size of it, I mean, we already knew it was a huge building, and at least the color seems to match pretty closely to the new storage units, right? They were blue too, weren't they?
Duplo blue, yes.
So, I mean, I'm more function over form. It looks like a big building, just like it looked to me when we did the development plan review. So, I don't know how you expected him to take that big, huge building and make it look much different. As far as columns, I'm not sure that that would make it match the local architecture any better. But I really don't have much input on this. I mean, it looks pretty much like I expected it to.
So you think it fits the neighborhood?
I spoke my piece at the development plan review. I didn't think that size of building was appropriate there, but
Just to confirm that the building does fit within all the zoning setbacks. It's far under maximum height, coverage, things like that, so.
as I recall, the lot coverage was allowed by someone else. I believe the zoning board of appeals approved a reduction in something, at least one something. Pretty sure lot coverage was one of them.
No, it was actually allowed by right within the zoning. The width of the lot is substandard, less than the 150 required.
That's what it was.
So what happens is the building setbacks actually shrink with every 6 inches for every foot it's substandard.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the size of the building. It's just that nothing's being done to break up the mass or monotony of it. It's just one flat face. Again, not trying to design your building for you specifically, but if there was some articulation of the individual entries with an individual signboard or something of that nature instead of one big blank face, I think that would do a lot to break it up and give some individuality to the tenant spaces.
Do you feel maybe like a awning over the windows or something would break it up a little, or?
Over the doors?
Yeah, actually, so the design hasn't changed from the last. You asked us to see if we could do some things in there. There's no room without some modifications. It would actually have to increase the size of the building and things like that. Again, the peak is 18 and a half feet, the edges is 12 feet. Put a 7-foot door in and a 3-foot sign with a foot for space, you're already at 12 feet. So now you start trying to put an awning. Where does the awning go? Does it go on the awning?
Well, I was suggesting possibly over the windows, so you wouldn't interfere with the sign. Not to say it would add any coverage or protection from the weather. And
I
know
understand,
his-
but it's not as easy as getting some wood and slapping it up on the side of the building.
Yes, the design of the building needs to change a little bit as far as the front facade. Not, you don't need to completely redesign the building or add any depth to
That's
it.
actually what we're asking to do. The test in the regulations is a determination of whether or not it fits in the character of Lunenburg. There's no guidelines or regulations to what that would actually be a determination of. So we're at the mercy of the board. Unfortunately, the applicant has been working with all the departments of the town, and unfortunately, time and money is out. The application before you is their application, and that's really it. So it's unfortunately, it comes down to the possibility of bringing a new business into town or losing an existing. So we're going to ask the board to vote on the application tonight.
Fair enough.
I guess I was sort of hesitant at the last meeting. I know it was at the suggestion of the engineer that we do it under the guise of the sign bylaw. I think maybe we should have addressed it before granting the waivers at that time, as I did with the parking. But we decided as a group to do that and move forward, so I guess we're at where we're at right now.
Yeah, I viewed that move as a sign of good faith to help them move their project along, understanding that we'd see some kind of a change coming back tonight, not just the same information regurgitated.
Right. I guess in the future, we should probably not do it under the guise. We should address it.
I'm just hopeful that we can, in the future, come up with some kind of design standards for that area especially. It's an important corridor, and we need to come up with some kind of a standard so that they have a better idea of what we're looking for, and we can at least have a better sense of what we want in that neighborhood. That's my neighborhood. It's just, once, and forgive me, I think that the self-storage is a great idea. But once you start letting the color schemes go, and you let other things go, then you pretty much have no, when your bylaw says in keeping with, then, you pretty much have no basis to make a decision that this or that is, out of line. So hopefully we can work on that.
Yes, it's true, and it was brought up that there's no real guidelines right now, except for it's up to the determination of the planning board, and I feel like we made a lot of suggestions last time.
I was just gonna say that, yeah, we
We didn't, certainly gave no input.
We don't have
Not give
documented,
input.
but we
Yep.
did provide input.
We did.
Explained the style of building we would like to see.
We gave examples of specific surrounding buildings that we'd like to see. I don't feel like we were deficient in our describing of what we were looking for.
Well, there's a difference between in the character of the neighborhood and trying to make this building look like the building across the street, with all due respect. There's an existing building on the property that's been there for 60 years. I think that actually should weigh into the decision of what the character of the neighborhood is.
Yes, but this doesn't look like the existing building.
I would say that this looks better than the existing building. The existing building is what is it, cinder block construction? And
Every construction you can think of.
And it's got a big I-beam hoist next to it with a pretty unkept lot. I think this looks a lot better than the
Than that.
existing lot. And it brings 2 new businesses. We approved the layout of the plan. I don't know how you think he's gonna hide this 6,400 square foot building.
I do it for a job. It can be done. I don't see an architect on board. I don't see the people who engineer the building aren't doing any design services for presentation here, which they should be if they want to sell a building.
I guess I would ask Adam, do we have any way to, it's either all or nothing? We either,
Well, it seems that way. You did bring up some of these issues the last time. I think the applicant did indicate that they felt that there was little to no room to alter the facade. The discussion then revolved around what materials and how that would look, bringing a rendering back as part of this. There were definite discussions around articulation of the front of the building, and I think there was a lot of things brought up that could be done. I don't know that the applicant indicated that that was possible for them to do. I think we also need to, we focused a lot on the building directly across the street. There is no real description of what the area encompasses. Is it the directly abutting parcels? Is it up and down the street? Even if you want to throw a stone and say from West Street to Pleasant and Whalum, or I guess it's Whalum at that point, West Street to Whalum, how many metal buildings are there? I think at least 70% of those buildings are metal in some way. Ken, you brought up the Proctor's building across the street. If I'm not mistaken, that's a metal building with some stone facade. How is that different than this building? And I'm asking a genuine question, because I'm not as familiar with
It's just the look and the style.
I have no
Okay.
problem with metal. The whole thing could be
Right.
metal. It's the articulation of the front.
not the
There's a
material.
lot you can do in 2 inches. Just
And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem doing it or looking for the applicant to find something within 2 inches. I don't know enough about metal buildings to say 2 inches is enough, or what can be done. Is the issue that it is a flat front? I mean, it sounds like from the applicant, it's all or nothing. So they've said this is what they have, and we either accept that or we don't.
So what if we don't? The whole project gets,
I'm not the applicant, so I couldn't say that the project dies, but it certainly sounds that way.
Are we deciding to, we're gonna rule on each of these individually, the signs and then the facade, or is that all?
Yeah, I mean, you could rule them individually, you could rule them as a package.
I think when we discussed it, you counted this as 2 modifications.
It's
For the
two,
sign.
yeah, it's,
So if you wanted to vote that way, then
Right, either way, it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you vote, if you're going affirmative and you vote them as under one vote, you can make one motion that would cover both modifications.
I mean, honestly, in my opinion, I think we kind of painted ourselves into a corner here with that, without addressing it at the last meeting prior to granting the waivers, but, I believe Damon had most of the input regarding the facade, so.
I did, and
I'm, what would your suggestion be? I guess I would say I'd be happy to support it if I knew do better isn't really.
Okay, if I were designing the building, that front stud wall doesn't need to follow the slope of the roof. It can go up straight, it can be articulated in height, you can get different signboards on there. You don't need that 4-foot overhang that's not doing anything besides sailing out there.
Right, so you're saying they could take back that overhang and then put one in that's a little bit lower and more.
Lower in several locations, you could do those awnings right on the building,
Over the doorways?
over the doorways. You could break it up and do individual little porticos. There's a number of things you could do to break it up and not just follow that 80-foot long, narrow, shallow roof line. And none of that's going to affect the overall structure of the building. I feel like we were being very cooperative last time, as generous as we possibly could be, and I don't really appreciate getting strong-armed into it or guilted into approving something because we tried to be nice.
Right.
Before we go too far down the road, is there anyone from the public who has anything to say about this project? No. Okay. Do you want to talk about the signs at all before we get into a decision about the facade?
Did the signs dimensions meet the 7-page sign bylaw?
As I am to understand it, they do.
Awesome.
And it's a backlit sign, we're okay with the backlit sign?
It doesn't move.
Backwards sign?
Oh, here it is.
Oh, backlit.
Personally, I'm fine with the signs. I mean, even the articulation that you gave the top of that pylon sign, if the building had some of that character and the cornice and breaking up the front facade, do that in a couple different heights maybe, I don't know. But, yeah, the signs to me look,
Okay. In regards to the signs, I mean, just for your benefit, I'm not seeing a phone number on the Perpy Pet, on the pole sign or the building. You might want to put the phone number on there just so it's visible, and I don't know if, doubt it would change the application, but just from a business standpoint. phone number on there would be beneficial to everyone.
Right, and that's the change.
That's nice.
Yep. I was just looking at other examples.
Well, I know you gave the, example of the, I don't know the name of the mall there, where the bar and the karate and everything, right? They have those.
Just Lakeview
Lakeview.
Plaza.
Lakeview Plaza, yeah. They got the little awnings out over the entrance.
That's a very long building, broken up,
Yep.
Right.
No, that's
and
pitched
not
the
much
same
more
way.
depth.
It is.
See? It has the little.
No, so
That
it's,
would
see, that to me is appropriate for the,
Right. I mean, they could
Area.
put the signs on top, but it would
and it looks
end
great.
up looking pretty much the same.
Much better than the building that was there, if anybody remembers that thing.
Is there any more discussion or suggestion? Or you truly sticking by the not willing to modify anything?
I can yell at a rock, but I can't get any money out of it, I'm sorry.
To bring up a past member, this may be one of the unintended consequences.
Of what?
What was that?
Unintended consequences. One of the previous
That's,
members
Unintended consequence of what?
of not being sure that you have everything in writing that you need to enforce your decision. I mean, they've come, you're right, I don't see an architect seal logo on there, but I don't see any requirement for it on our bylaw.
Correct,
I don't see,
I don't see that we have a review architect.
correct.
I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for somebody to design something. People who sell these metal buildings have design departments. They came up with these elevations. Why couldn't they modify it? Okay. So the sign one seems to be agreed upon. Would anyone like to make a motion as far as the signage?
I move that we approve the signs as submitted.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
aye.
All right?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone like to make a motion as far as the facade of the building?
I move that we approve the facade of the building as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Well, again, I'll reiterate, before we were trying to be helpful and give time, speed up their process. Don't appreciate not seeing any change. I'm not trying to deter against any local business starting up. I deal with people with startup businesses all the time, and I know money's tight, but
I mean, with all due...
to set the precedent of accepting something because they don't want to go any further with it is not one I want to go down either, so.
I know,
It's not can't, sir.
With all due respect, Damon, he did make it clear when you asked him if he was going to address the facades at the last meeting, his answer to you was unfortunately not. He did not address them. That was his answer at the meeting, so...
I don't recall that.
Well, I rewatched the meeting, and that was his answer, so I think he gave every indication that they weren't going to address it, and we granted the waivers and...
We didn't
allowed
grant
the-
any waivers. We said we addressed that under signage bylaw review.
Again, there's no actual approval for the building. All the regulations require is the planning board to make a determination whether or not it fits into the character. There's some in town that aren't really looking for an approval or anything. We're just looking for you guys to fulfill the requirements of the regulations. As a resident of the town, I hope the planning board can revise the regulations, throw in a colonial style, some kind of words as a guideline.
Okay. We can't change that overnight. We have a
Correct.
regulation. We worked with the regulation.
Correct, and we worked with the regulation too, sir, and that's the...
Don't feel that you did. Because we
Sorry,
made a
we'll
lot
have
of
to agree to
suggestions. It's
disagree.
up to the planning board You chose not to follow any of the planning board's suggestions to say that there's no mechanism in place. It doesn't go with me. So. Personally, I don't feel I can support it on that premise, but I don't know how everyone else feels.
I feel it's unfortunate that we granted approval with a condition upon approving something else later.
But it's part of the approval process. It's something that either we approved before or we do it now. We put it off to give them time to keep their project rolling. It's not like it's too late. It's still the same item we were stuck on before.
Right.
We gave them more time to move forward and focus on one individual thing, and nothing was done. I'm not seeing how we are in the wrong here.
We provided a rendering at your request.
We requested a lot of other things, too.
You requested more explanation on the building. We gave that to you in a rendering. Again, the rendering is not required as part of yours. We've already gone above and beyond your regulations.
Don't feel
I'm
you
sorry
did.
that, it's getting contentious here, but
Okay. Any other comment? We'd like to vote.
I agree that I don't think we did anything wrong, but I think this could have been addressed more at the last meeting instead of just granting the approval.
We talked about it for quite a long time.
I know, but he also said to you that he wasn't willing to address it, so,
And I guess my fault for giving him a chance to change his mind. So, if that's all that's to be said. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
Nay. So approved, 3-2.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here you go, sir.
So the next order of business for the night is a continuation of the informational meeting for Unitel at 357 Electric Ave. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I see a member in the audience that may be here for 274 Prospect. That has been continued, if that's,
oh, sorry.
just so you know.
Says Ken.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Did you, right?
I think so. No, we
So
checked
the
my-
planning
I have
board
my
will hold
own.
an informational meeting on
Greg has his own.
Oh, no.
December 14th,
I
2015.
kept the folder, so.
Town Hall, 17 Main Street, Lunenburg, Mass. To hear and discuss the site plan review under section 8.4 of the protected bylaw of the town of Lunenburg. The application is for a proposed 45,000 square foot office and maintenance facility with associated driveways, parking, grading, and utilities at 357 Electric Avenue, Lunenburg, Mass. Applicant is Unitil Fitchburg Gas and Electric Company. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mark Bellavo. I'm here this evening representing Unitil as their attorney. And with me this evening are Jackie Agel and Tom Murphy from Unitil, Mark Piermarini from Whitman Bingham Associates, and Christine West from our architect, Kite Architects. Ernie Nato could not be here this evening, our general contractor. So this is our third meeting with the planning board. We were here initially on December 14th, and then we met with you a second time on January 11th. We most recently met with the Conservation Commission last Wednesday, February 17th, for our second meeting with the Conservation Commission. So at our meeting with the Conservation Commission last week, we kind of caught them up with what we presented to the planning board on January 11th. And then we also presented to the Conservation Commission new information, which we'll obviously be presenting to you this evening. At the conclusion of the Conservation Commission meeting, the members of the Conservation Commission identified 4 items that they asked us to add to the plans, 4 minor items which I'll share with you. And we've actually already done that, and those items are incorporated onto these plans. And so our next step with the Conservation Commission is to go back to their meeting on March 2nd. And we hope to be able to conclude that process with them at that time. So on the 17th, the Conservation Commission asked us to add some signage on the plans that would say no snow storage beyond this point. I'll show you that on the plan, so we've added that to it. They asked us to revise our plans and the stormwater management plan to indicate that the grass in the vegetated filter strip would be maintained at a 3-inch to 6-inch level. So we've done that. Previously, what it said was no more than 6 inches, but the Conservation Commission wanted us to say 3 to 6 inches, so we've added that information on the construction detail sheet and in our O&M plan. Third, when we were talking about the 2,000-gallon storage tank, you may recall that the planning board asked us to include alarms in that storage tank at our January 11th meeting. So we now have 2 alarms, a visual alarm and an audio alarm. And when we were before the Conservation Commission, our plans showed that the visual alarm was at 27 inches and the audio at 39. They asked us to lower those alarms in the tank, effectively meaning that the alarms will go off sooner because the alarms are lower into the tank. So the plans you are seeing show the visual alarm at 12 inches and the audible alarm at 24 inches. And lastly, they asked that we add to our stormwater operation and maintenance, or stormwater management plan, what the operation and maintenance schedule will be for the oil and gas separators. So we've added that to our stormwater management plan. A couple, and we will get back to the plans. I know you have that, you're looking at some of that stuff. We'll go through those in detail, but I just, if I may, want to share, because I want to make sure this board has everything that the Conservation Commission has and vice versa. So at the Conservation Commission previously, one of the commission members asked about Unitil's environmental stewardship, generally how it manages, environmental sites that it has within the company. And so what I provided to the commission last week was a copy of Unitil's Securities and Exchange Commission 10K filing with regard to environmental matters. So Unitil is a publicly traded company, has to file a 10K with the SEC every year, and as part of that filing, they have to disclose their environmental matters. And it's a 230-page report. I'm not giving you 230 pages, but I am providing you with a copy of that section of the SEC. And so what you,
Okay. I guess. Thought it was thicker.
One more.
so what you have in front of you is just the front page of the 10K filing, just so you can see the source of this information. And then the second page, two-sided, describes the various environmental sites that Unitil is managing via its various subsidiaries and the status of those sites and an accounting of costs related to those sites. So this was, I think this was more of a Conservation Commission discussion than it really was here on January 11th. But they were interested on what Unitil's track record was and their level of responsibility in managing any environmental, sites that they may have in their system. And as you can see, this is the bulk of this report has to do with their manufactured gas plant sites. These are sites that existed from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, so they're kind of legacy sites that Unitil has acquired when it has acquired different businesses, and that these sites are being appropriately managed, and as all electric companies have had to manage these kind of coal tar sites over the decades and centuries, actually. So I think the end up of this report, it shows that Unitil takes its environmental stewardship very seriously, budgets for it, is required to publicly disclose all of this and report it, and acts very responsibly in that regard. A second item, again, just to make sure that this board has everything that the Conservation Commission has, is a letter that Whitman and Bingham prepared for the Conservation Commission with regard to the stormwater regulations and the design of the stormwater system at the site. Don't believe this letter presents anything new. We just wanted to capture it in a single written document. This topic was discussed at length at our prior planning board meeting and has been discussed at length at both Conservation Committee meetings. Now, the next thing I would just like to present to you briefly is, in this plan set that you received tonight, highlight some of the areas that have changed since since the last plan set that you had occasion to look at. And so most of the changes are reflected on sheets 2 and 3. Sheet 2 is the grading and utilities plan. Sheet 3, layout and materials plan. And then certainly there are 3 construction detail sheets, and those are sheets 7, 8, and 9. The plan set, is there a 9 of 9 that's sheet 9 that's missing? Does it go from sheet 8 to sheet 7?
So GZA had made some recommendations on the handling of the water from the pole storage. Those are reflected on these plans, correct?
Yes, they are.
This catch basin is in this piping that's going over to the secondary tank?
Yes, yeah.
So all of their changes have been incorporated into these plans as well?
They have, yes,
Okay,
yes. they are.
Great,
Yep.
thanks.
So as just mentioned, these plans incorporate the recommendations made in the GZA letter, which it sounds like the board has received a copy of that letter.
Yes.
But I'll highlight some other things that are not in the GZA letter. If you look at sheet 3 is a helpful sheet, and starting with the transformer storage area, you'll see that on the sides, we're proposing what we're calling a wide berm. So what a wide berm is, there's a construction detail on it, is that it's a sloped berm. It still peaks at 6 inches, but what it allows is for vehicles, basically a forklift, to get in and out of there. So instead of kind of a rectangular curb, it's a
usable.
It's a usable berm. In the front of the transformer storage area, it is that more rectangular 6-inch curb, and similarly in the back. What we also did at the transformer storage area that's shown on this sheet is that you may recall that the spare transformer pad previously was in the front left corner. We moved it to the back left corner. There was no need for us to have it in the front, so we simply moved it into the back. We have, at the board's request, we were talking about snow buildup, and if more than 6 inches, you'd lose the sight of the berms, and you've asked that we put kind of permanent snow markers in, so we're proposing bollards in each corner, and actually, I could draw your attention to detail sheet 10 of 10, and this is a separate construction detail that shows the transformer storage area up close, and it's easier to see where the bollards are going.
There's the detail sheet.
And there is there's also a separate detail on the on the posts themselves.
Access the pad.
Oh, there it is, yeah. So these are 4-foot posts, 4 feet from grade, 6-inch steel pipe filled with concrete.
Great.
May I ask why the one was omitted from the northeast corner, if you're looking at the one by the proposed spare transformer areas?
Yeah, it's just it's basically an inaccessible
Against the
location.
Okay.
We conclude the bollard really wouldn't do anything there.
Okay.
Although you do have trailers, you have trailer space right
Staying with this sheet for a minute. This sheet also going over to the pole storage area, you can see that in the front, we've proposed a wide berm there for the same reason.
May I ask why there's no bollards at the pole storage?
I'm sorry?
May I ask why there's no bollards at the pole storage to protect that berm?
So the pole storage area, and I have some photos of that'll help see it, is very visible. The poles are on racks starting 3 feet above the ground.
Okay.
And then the poles are on top of that. So we don't think there's the same kind of concern with, plows or vehicles going into that. And the second, I think what got us onto that topic, the sensitivity with the transformer storage area is.
Yeah, that was the primary thing.
There are pieces of equipment in there we didn't want to hit them,
Transformer.
run into them.
Yeah.
Whereas the poles are these big solid wooden poles, less of a concern.
Yeah, well, I thought that a large part of the concern was it was hitting the transformers, but it was also keeping the integrity of the berm. And if we're talking about a berm that's 3 feet wide, made of bituminous concrete in the winter, and it gets clipped by a snowplow, originally it's going to be fine, but that bituminous is going to start to spall very quickly, and as the salt and the water and the snow get in there, it's going to deteriorate quickly, and you're going to have the potential of a penetrable portion of that berm. And maybe you don't need bollards over by the poles, because if the poles get hit, they're not going to leak any more penta than they would if they didn't get hit. But maybe there's even those goofy, finger wide reflective
Snow
things.
plates, yeah.
Just so you know that the berm is there.
Right.
That was I know we were protecting the transformers,
Yeah.
but we were more protecting the berm and the integrity of the bituminous from the edge of a snowplow.
Okay, I mean, I don't think there'd be a problem by putting
Yeah,
snow
and-
poles there.
yeah.
And momentarily here, I'm going to circulate some photographs so you can actually, we took some photographs of the existing pole storage yard so you can kind of see what, I mean, this one's going to look a little different, but it's generally the same appearance.
Can I just ask you a question about the wide berm around the pole storage?
Yes.
Is that just a front berm, or is
Just-
that, it doesn't go all the way around?
No, there's a berm around the pole storage area completely. Okay, so it's completely contained. The only place where there's a wide berm is
Is
the
in the
front.
front,
And
okay.
really, that's again for the vehicle
accessibility.
loading. So instead of slamming into it,
Sure.
it would go up a little bit. And so there again, trying to prevent damage to it.
Okay, thank you.
So why don't I provide some of this information now.
It's a set. Okay.
So what you have now are two photographs and then a drawing of the concrete bunkers. So I'll draw your attention to the photograph, which is more of a long-distance shot of one of our pole storage racks. Now, this is our pole storage rack that currently exists at the facility in Fitchburg. And so you can see that the poles are elevated, approximately 3 feet off the ground. You have these kind of cement pilings there that have a steel bar running between them, and then the poles are stacked on top of the bar. You can, in the second photograph, it's just kind of a close-up shot of the same rack, so you can see the cement foundations, the steel girders, and then the poles that are situated across the steel girders. And so you can see from the sketch, the pole yard bunkers, as they're referred to, will be substantially similar to what's there today, a little different design. And however, a major difference for our future location is that the surface area will be, the poles will be stored over asphalt, so it'll be an impermeable surface. Here you can see it's over ground. And that in the entire pole storage area will be contained with a 6-inch berm. Now, since we met with you last, Unitil engaged GZA, a environmental engineering firm here in New England, to review an earlier plan set. I believe it was the January 11th plan set, to kind of look at our design with a focus on the pole storage area. And one of the recommendations they made was that we should consider because we had already, we're proposing already to contain the pole storage area, they proposed that we, install a catch basin in that area and then drain it over to the transformer storage area, because they saw what we had set up there. And the advantage they saw in that, and again, if you've had an opportunity to read the GZA letter, is that the stormwater runoff from that containment area will run through two catch basins, two oil and gas separators, essentially receive treatment twice, and then receive further protection in the event a slug of oil from either locations is released. It will go through the petrol barrier. The petrol barrier will engage and prevent it from draining out, into the outlet flow. So we thought that suggestion made a lot of sense. We've incorporated it into this plan. I believe page 10, the detail sheet, you can see we have a detail of the pole storage area. Yeah, which doesn't show a whole lot more than the plan, but it helps a little bit. And then with regard to the transformer storage area, you can see that we have now a little bit larger catch basin, and you can see that catch basin on page 7 is the precast catch basin with the petrol barrier.
Now, this petrol barrier is nothing like you showed us before. Before you showed us an insert and a pipe. Now, is this to take up the, I'm assuming this is a round manhole, circular? Is this,
Yes.
is this the entire diameter of the manhole?
No, well, if you look at page
Yes, no?
page 7, and what's helpful is to look at the design of the catch basin with the petrol barrier on page 7, and then at the same time, look at sheet 10, where you see the double graded catch basin. So the way these things are installed is that you take the grates off and you drop the petrol barrier right in there to that level. Petrol barriers are custom designed for each site by the manufacturer. So this design was given to us, frankly, by the manufacturer. And so it is designed to be lowered right in so that when it needs maintenance or replacement, you take the grates off, you take the petrol barrier out, you put the new one in.
I apologize, where is the plug? This is sheet 7.
Sheet 7, yeah, Mark will show you.
Okay. Right, but is it more of an inline plug, or is it?
Is this the plug?
Right, okay. Yeah, I think what Matt was saying is they had like drop-in ones that were on the original.
They're sticking around for a square.
Right, and I know he had some concerns there would be some restrictions, so.
When we were here on our last time we met with you on January 11th, we did not have a design of the petrol barrier. We were just describing it generally. Now Mark Piermarini has worked with the manufacturer to establish this design.
So it looks like it goes the entire width of the interior of a 5-foot diameter manhole,
Catch basin, yes, right.
catch basin,
Yeah.
and it fits through a double 2x2 grate?
No, the manhole,
Mark, why don't you come up? speak up.
I see, all right.
top of the manhole, it'll be a flat top.
Right.
So before they put the top on, it'll be lowered in.
Okay, so then how do they,
Change it.
they don't take the grates off and replace the,
Change
Well,
it.
it's the barrier, the thing that it sits in
Yeah.
gets put in first. The barrier can be moved out, or it's a membrane, so it can be put in.
So it fits in through the manhole cover?
Correct.
Oh, so it's
It's
Flex, it's pliable,
to somewhat-
flexible.
Correct, to get it in
it's like
there,
a
to place
filter,
it in.
you curl it up, put it in,
Correct.
and spread it out.
So
But the initial insert is what I'm saying, you know, the
Yeah,
metal insert.
it's, so
Correct.
Was it
it's
like a
kind of like a
flange
coffee
that sits
filter
in?
holder,
Correct.
and then the coffee filter.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right?
All right.
Similar, yeah.
And so you could replace the coffee filter, but the
Well,
basket.
it's a flange with a
yeah,
membrane
the
stretched
basket
across
gets
it.
installed.
Yeah, and that is permanent, the flange is permanent. This is
Yes,
part of the construction.
that's what he's indicating.
It's just a little different than the material that we had gotten
Yes.
last time.
Well, all right, and then when you look at the sheet 2, or even 3, 2 has the inverts. You've got a catch basin over by the pole storage. You've got a rim of 510 and an invert of 508 on an 8-inch pipe. That only gives you less than 2 feet of cover on the pipe itself from finish grade. And then when you look at the catch basin in the transformer area, it's even less cover. You've got a rim of 508 with an invert of an 8-inch pipe at 506.33, which gives you 1.01 feet cover. So when you get into extended periods of freeze, if there is water in there, it's going to be frozen.
It's not expected to be water in there.
No,
Like,
no. Well, I mean, you try to prevent the unexpected from messing up a system. This is supposed to retain things, so I mean, it's general accepted practice to have 2.5-foot minimum cover on a catch basin, is it not?
That's general, but if I have a site where, you know, we want to get this outlet to go out to the grade, and I have the bit membrane barrier, so I have to get the inlet pipe above the barrier, and then have the outlet below it. I mean, we've had, you know, I've designed pipe with 1 foot of cover before. It's,
So this barrier is basically the filter that the water goes through.
correct.
So then it's going to be soaked, and if it's 1.5 to 2 feet below the open double catch basin grate, you don't think it's going to freeze in low temperatures?
No, I'm told it doesn't freeze.
I would tend to disagree with that, but
I can only say what they tell me.
You've been told that it doesn't
Yeah,
freeze.
SBI, yeah. That
and
membrane
you've been told that 2 feet is acceptable on an open grate?
of cover? Yeah. Yeah. So you, to mean to where? To the membrane or to my pipe?
Well, your pipe
To the
only-
membrane? Yeah, the membrane actually, I actually asked them if they can be lowered into the structure lower. Usually they have it closer to the rim. Because some containment areas, you don't have a pipe going out. And he said, yeah, they can be set wherever they need to be in the structure.
And so that doesn't just become a solid unit in the winter when it freezes up? Really? Some-
Yeah, it works in
somehow
all
It stays
times, yeah.
permeable.
Has our review engineer reviewed this?
I don't believe he's seen the current design.
Yeah, in a lot of their designs that I've seen, actually, the petrol barrier is right at the surface. In other words, these things are not like below the frost line. They're designed and they function in the elements. They're typically right at the surface. This is actually lower than most of the designs I've seen in their brochures and literature. So, I mean, we're very confident that freezing, the petrol barrier freezing is not an issue. This is not like just a southern climate product at all.
What, if I could ask, what is the diameter of the actual barrier? I mean, does it fit this whole thing? It's a 5-foot.
It fits to whatever structure you want it designed for. So, depending on.
Okay. Do you have information on how much oil it will take to activate that? 'Cause that's pretty big, yeah.
Well,
How much oil it takes to activate it? I know it's a small amount, but I don't know the exact
yeah,
parts per
so the
million.
way I understand it is, it just starts whittling away at the permeability of it. So if a small amount of oil gets into 1 square inch area of this 5-foot circle, that 1 square inch area will become solidified and no longer things will permeate through it. So it catches the
The oil.
oil and solidifies as it catches
As it
it. And
catches it.
eventually, if there was a significant spillage, it would solidify
block it.
the whole thing.
Okay.
Or your flow through it would be greatly reduced.
Let me see.
But the idea is that no oil can get through it, because as soon as the oil comes in contact with it, it
Boom.
solidifies.
Got it, okay.
So eventually, if a big oil spill got dumped in there, the whole thing would just solidify.
Yeah, no, I was
Oh,
exactly,
yeah.
you were exactly, that's exactly where I was going. If it's a small amount of oil.
Yeah, it's just
you
gonna,
know,
it's gonna blank, and that's why they say you
Blank it
have
out,
to
that's fine.
maintain it.
Right.
So it
Sure.
has to be checked, and,
As long as it gets caught, that's all I'm
and
concerned about.
it's replaced once a year, is that correct, the Ben Bryan?
It's
Yes.
checked, replaced or checked every?
Replaced once
Check
a year.
once a month.
If it's been engaged, you have to replace it. If it hasn't been engaged, then they recommend the maintenance is replace it once a year.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
I guess my concern is that it's dealing with two different substances, and in your GZA report, it says, well, it is GZA's understanding that the wood preservatives and diesel oil mixture that is used to treat the wood poles purchased by Unitil has not been specifically tested by the manufacturer for the petrol plug.
Yep.
And my concern is that in the pole storage area, if you get a minimal amount over time hitting that petrol plug, is it going to reduce its ability to react to the oil that comes from the transformers if there's...
Reduce its ability.
Well, would it coat it somehow and not allow the oils from the transformers to make it
No,
work
because
effectively?
it's gonna
or-
react to the oil the same way, right? Because it's gonna react to the diesel fuel the same way that it reacts to the transformer oil. And the diesel fuel is a 90-something% carrier for that preservative. So if the preservative is leaking out of the poles, it's
Right.
gonna be carried likely by the diesel fuel. The diesel fuel is gonna get captured by the petrol plug.
Okay. It was just a concern that maybe the other chemical
Yeah, I
would
think
make
they're
it
gonna
not
have to,
work
they're gonna have to
properly in
maintain it. I
regards
think
to-
it's gonna
okay.
get spots from any kind of leakage that occurs anywhere. But based upon the report that I read and the other research that I did, it seems like a pretty solid catch. And I didn't even think of what GZA? Yeah, GZA recommended. I thought that was a great recommendation, even beyond what I was expecting. So I think it's a good approach to mitigate the challenge. I think it certainly exceeds what they're doing at Fitchburg.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that was my
That's a
other
fair
question.
statement.
In the picture, the snow under the pole storage area is
Yeah.
all melted,
Yeah.
and there seems to be an abundance of snow outside of that area. I'm wondering if...
But we know that
the difference is it's pavement.
Right,
Pavement.
exactly.
Snow's not going to melt as quick. And
Right,
then you've got
right.
poles covering the area. and
My
just the-
concern is
just
that
the heat from the ground.
there's some sort of chemical there on the ground that would...
can you
Snow
get
fast.
penta leakage without it being contained in an oil, the oil carrier?
No, so it's a mixture. Okay, so they mix a wood preservative that
So it's going to be
contains-
it has to be suspended. If it's coming out, it's going to be suspended in there.
It's actually a powder, if I recall my research correctly.
Yeah, right. And so the reason why there's that diesel in there as the carrier oil is to, in fact, be able to inject it to
Push it
carry
through, yeah.
to carry it in. And similarly, it comes out, as it's been explained to me, in that same way.
Okay.
Another recommendation, I just want to, that GZA made, which Unitil had proposed initially, was that the area be formally inspected by environmental compliance people. We were proposing a 2-week formal inspection. GZA said just do it weekly, once a week, have an inspection form. So we've prepared one. We gave this to the Conservation Commission.
One other question about poles. When you get a broken pole back, where does that go and how is that stored? Is that stored upright or is it stored horizontally?
Okay, so it depends on the circumstances. So let's say there's a vehicle snaps a pole, okay, and they remove the pole. Typically, what, as it's been explained to me, is that pole is no longer usable for utility purposes. So the pole will be cut up into pieces for transportation, either if there's a large amount of solid waste as a result of that cleanup, it will sometimes go directly to a proper solid waste disposal facility, especially if we have a third-party contractor helping to clean it up. If it's kind of more in the normal course of maintenance or repair or replacement, those wood butts may come back, because we do have a bin, as you know, on site to store, wood butts until they're taken off site for
So it would
disposal.
go into a container?
Go into one of those bins in the
Yes,
back.
okay.
right? And under Massachusetts law, they can be disposed of as solid waste.
They have Yes, that's
dispose of as solid waste
Yes.
versus hazardous waste.
Yes.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, so the planning board now has all the information that the Conservation Commission has, and so both boards are caught up. Obviously, you have a little bit more than the Concom has because we've incorporated their revisions into this plan set, and we'll be meeting with them again on March 2nd.
A comment on the petrol barrier. I appreciated that you had a detailed, descriptive detail the first time you suggested use of it. I would also appreciate a specific detail for the one that's put into the 5-foot diameter manholes.
Oh, you want one?
You're looking for like a
Manufactured.
plan?
Like manufacturer's...
Plan view?
Well, just manufacturer's information
Okay.
specific to the non-pipe plug.
So just so we know what you're asking for, what is it that you would
Well,
like us
something
to
besides a
add?
hatch pattern on a cross-section of a
The
manhole.
detail of what is actually in this 5-foot manhole, that's what's lacking. The information that you provided us before described other stuff that went inside of a pipe, and was the research information that we were given, so. So this is a little bit different. If we just have some details of what the design aspects are of this particular unit, that would be helpful. Because we had asked for things like, how fast water flows through it, how much it limits the flows, and I don't think we ever got any of that
No.
information.
Well, we did, thank you. That was actually one more item. Mark,
Oh, so
why
it's
don't you
not
speak? Mark spoke to them
Well, I
directly,
mean,
so
it's
he can
totally
speak.
different.
In regards to just flow, they do design them for what, if I give them a flow, they're gonna design it for that flow that goes through. So
These are custom made
per whoever,
per
what you
every
need.
single site.
Correct. And when I spoke to him, so I can do the flow that I need. For these two areas, the flow for the 100-year is 2.1 CFS. So I've sized these pipes, especially the last pipe for the 2.1 CFS, and the grates, catch the grates are all sized for the 100-year. So all the pipings for 100-year storm.
What about total containment? The 2,000-gallon overflow tank.
Yeah.
Because you're sharing the piping system now, is there any need to upsize that? You go over that? You know what I'm saying? Because you're
Yeah.
taking both areas now?
Right, yeah. I actually spoke with Mark about that, and I'm reading a note he sent me. So we have 2,261 cubic feet of storage
Okay, yeah.
that is available. And so we think that, Mark can explain it in more technical detail, but based on the overall design, with the way we have the flow, that there's still more than adequate.
Plenty for any kind of
plenty
flooding.
capacity.
Plus, you
Okay.
gotta remember we have the alarms too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've built in both,
Yeah,
the alarms, and now they're set very low in the tank. So there's, we feel that there's some good redundancy,
Good, okay.
lots of protection, redundancy, that, it's certainly, as GZA noted, because they researched this quite extensively, is that it exceeds what they see as being done in the industry today. I mean, to be, in all frankness, what you see is in our Fitchburg facility, that's what the industry does today. That's a typical pole storage yard. We're designing what will probably become the future state-of-the-art, frankly, pole storage yard.
Okay.
But it's fair, we're confident saying that what we're proposing for our new facility is head and shoulders above what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, I would say if you could just get some kind of detail that we can give to our review engineer, just so we can give his blessing to it, then everything you said sounds good to me, but I'm not the review engineer. so-
Understood, yeah, no. So we'll add that one item, more detail on the petrol barrier, onto the detail sheet and whatever's required.
I'll take whatever the manufacturer gives me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, it's manufacturer specs, obviously, yeah, yeah,
Just so we have some record of it.
yeah.
In reference to the pole storage, it was brought up at the last meeting, I think by a member of the public. There was a question on how many poles you store. You said racks. I was envisioning, like you go to a lumber yard and there's racks.
Right.
Looks like it's a single layer of storage on the rack, and that's as tall as the racks get.
Yes, that's my understanding, that's right.
So you're probably looking at somewhere between 20 and 40 poles on site at any time?
Yeah, we've said in the information we've given to you, we maintain on site approximately between 40 and 50 poles.
Okay.
And that's enough to kind of cover what we call a moderate storm event. So if there was, a moderate storm event and we kind of estimate that, we might have 40 poles down or something we need to replace. So that's what we keep on site.
Okay.
Obviously, if we need an emergency, we contact our vendor right away and they bring more.
And there was also a question about, and I don't know that there's really an answer to this, the average length of time a pole might spend on the rack. Is it so hard to determine, or is there a lifespan of storage?
Yeah, it's really, I followed up with that. It's really variable. I mean, it really depends upon the needs. It's certainly if there's a major winter storm event like we've had in past years, then there's a high demand on the poles that
Sure.
come out. If it's, like the winter we're having now, there's been very little issues. They'll stay in place for a while. So
dependent on a lot of
we have
factors
limited
and-
so you can see our pole storage area, our dimensions are 190 feet long by 24 feet wide. So we have a limited defined area. I think on one of the sheets, we actually on that page 10 detail sheet, we are actually showing pole lengths. And so the longer poles are off to the left. We try to, create a little more specificity there. So it's certainly, by our area, it's a defined, limited number of poles.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other specific questions from the board members or from the public this time?
The review engineer is here as well if you have questions based on.
I was going to go here right after the public.
I'm just making sure that everybody knew he was here because the question was already asked if he had seen it.
Any members of the public with comments to this topic?
Can I pick this up? Yeah. Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. Just let me be clear that I'm not here speaking on behalf of any commissions or boards or anybody else in town except myself. I just have one, been involved in a lot of this, so it's all good. But I still just have one thing that's bothering me that I don't know if you've dug into, I've missed it. In regards to stormwater runoff. And, I know the board and the conservation have done as much as they can and within their power to try to improve it. Right now, it's sitting at like 55% of total solved solids, which is not anything to write home about. So it'd be nice to try to get that up because it all ends up in the wetlands. And I just didn't know if, I didn't know if, right now, all the stormwater from this half of the lot kind of goes over here, runs down there, and then dumps into the wetlands. And there's a reasonable amount of land over here. And I didn't know if there was ever looked into if a more conventional retention pond or something could be put over here rather than just dumping this and piping it into the wetland. So I just didn't know if that would ever been discussed or whatever. But again, whatever we could do to get above the 55%, 80 is if this was new, the requirement would be 80. So it'd be nice to be striving for that. And just ask that question.
So I don't personally recall us talking about that. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, again, I'll just restate, this is a redevelopment project, so we're required to meet to the maximum extent practicable. That area that he's talking about is all wood, I'd rather keep that vegetated instead of opening it all up to a big basin, and it's kind of uphill more, so I don't know if it would work anyways. But, so we have the grass channels, the stone check dams, the vegetated filter strips. We're meeting the 55% TSS, which is pretty good for redevelopment. And I just think overall the design has been adequate. It's also been reviewed by your engineer and everything's been signed off on by him. So, I mean, that's my response there.
So Adam, there's no mechanism or anything saying that he should improve upon the standards, or?
Well, again, because it's a redevelopment project, the state has taken the tact that in redevelopment, you look to do as much as practicable, that you can do within a reasonable scope without causing extreme financial or other hardship. It's practicable is a difficult concept to sometimes get your hands around, because what's practicable to one person may be less so to another. And I know there's a legal definition, and I think that perception often rules a lot of that on what's practicable and what's not. I mean, the board could certainly harangue them. If they're at 55%, I don't, and perhaps Jeff can shine some light on this, I don't know how much more they could get. Jeff has reviewed the project, seems to feel that it is in keeping with the spirit of that standard. I mean, could we require vortex manholes and additional sediment? But maybe. I don't know that it necessarily gets us where we want to be, and I don't know that it makes the project a better project. But I'll turn that to Jeff, because that's more, I think, of an engineering question. And, you know, I know enough to be dangerous and not enough to actually have an impact.
So Jeff, I guess it's your turn on the stage.
Good evening for everyone. For the record, I'm Jeff Walsh. I'm with Graves Engineering peer review consultant for the planning board. I'd like to start with Mr. Luck's question, if I could.
Sure.
Absolutely. For redevelopment, the applicant is supposed to meet certain standards to the maximum extent practicable, striving to make, in this case, the 80% total suspended solids, TSS removal if they can. But at a minimum of meeting the standards to the maximum extent practicable, they have to make an improvement to the site. And they certainly made the argument that they're improving the site by reducing impervious area, meeting a reduction in peak rates of runoff, that's one of the standards. Improving water quality by the 55% TSS removal, which is non-existent now, essentially non-existent. And they're practicing source control, which is not a standard by itself, but it does talk to, actually, it's part of the standard under land uses with higher potential pollutant load. The short of it is, I didn't see anything as an engineer that I could force the hand on anything beyond what was being proposed. It certainly exceeded what customarily I've seen with other projects is you know, compliance with the regulations. Now, specifically with respect to adding, let's say, a drainage system of catch basins and stormwater basins, those types of best management practices of BMPs, they require a loss of elevation every time the water flows into a catch basin. Certainly, there's a equivalent loss of elevation when the water flows through a pipe system, but that's no different than the overland flow they have here. The same slope would apply whether it's on the ground surface or in a pipe system. But where they have a set elevation they have to discharge to here, they only have so much elevation to work with across the site unless they raise the site up by bringing in earth fill. So to satisfy the head loss through a catch basin system of stormwater or impoundment such as a detention basin, the site would have to be higher to accommodate those head losses. That's the short of it as I see it as an engineer. Mm-hmm. So they relied on what's more commonly referred to nowadays as a country drainage system. Not a fancy name for it flows overland, goes through things that are on the ground surface, such as swales and so forth, grass swales, stone check dams, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wish I could do better, but that's as best as I could do, Mr. Luck. Okay. I was charged at our last meeting with taking a look into the Petro plug that was proposed at the time, and to getting a better understanding of that system and so forth. And I know there was a lot of detailed discussion about it tonight. I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of where I'm at. I'm not going to tell you anything that's much different from what you've heard already this evening. I did review the GZA report in detail. I did contact Solidification Products Incorporated. That's the company that makes the petrol plugs. They got three major products. The petrol plugs that were proposed over a month ago, the petrol barrier that's now being proposed, so I hear, and the petrol pipe. They each serve a different function. The petrol plug, I was told, is typically used on an indoor application where you'd go into a vertical standpipe, such as a floor drain, and you'd have lower flows. There would be a less of likelihood of having sediments and other things deposited into this unit that would block the system. The petrol barrier that's being proposed here, that, I was told, is the type of product that should be used in this application. An outdoor application, whether it's outdoors under a closed area or outdoors like here, subject to rainfall. The company designs these on a regular basis. They're used outside, cold environments as well as warm. The petrol barrier, actually, its first line of defense is it has some kind of mechanism to try to capture some of the sediments so that it, not for the purpose of capturing the sediments, I took it to be for the purpose of prolonging the life of the adsorbent that's inside, that's doing the job. And that's the difference between the barrier and the plug, plus the barrier handles much higher flows. So I have yet to review the documents you received this evening. I received them in my office earlier today, didn't have the opportunity to look at them. I did receive them electronically on Thursday, but again, I didn't spend much time on those. I just didn't have the time between Thursday and today. I feel all in all, I'm in a much better position to talk to you about this system than I was on January 11th. The company was very forthcoming with the information. He sent over a number of documents to me that I did take a look through, and again, it feels like we're on the right track. I wanted the opportunity to look at the design plans and compare them back to the documents, the petrol barrier documents, and certainly I'll do that as we go forward. As far as other site plan design issues we had, as my last letter, which I think was December 31st, I didn't have any other site design issues at that time. But since then, I did meet with the sewer commissioners about 2 weeks ago, and one of the other things that was brought up, I had another look at an oil grit separator, which is on the sanitary line that receives runoff from the bay drains. And at that meeting and verbally to the applicant's team as well as to the commissioners, I suggested the design engineer look at the sizing of that oil grit separator again. It probably needs to be upsized a little bit based on the information that I had. And I suspect that'll be on the plans I just received, but I don't know that for a fact yet. Okay. And the last thing, the Penta. Well, they told me, the manufacturer told me they don't have any data just on the Penta itself. But knowing that now from the GZA report, the Penta is a solute that is dissolved in the solvent diesel fuel. Well, it's the diesel fuel and its interaction with the petrol barrier that's going to drive how things work. What I gathered is from some of the chemical information on both Penta as well as diesel. Penta likes to be dissolved in a solvent rather than water, so it's going to dissolve readily into the diesel, as we know, otherwise they wouldn't be using diesel. The diesel is what's going to adsorb onto the material. The Penta prefers not to be water soluble. It's got a low solubility, I should say, in water, and it's got a vapor pressure much lower than diesel fuel. So as the diesel fuel evaporates from the poles, the Penta is left behind, is what I interpreted from that. So that's chemistry from a civil engineer, guys. All right. Very good. Any questions or anything I can answer? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Before we move along, is there any more questions from the public, just to wrap up? Okay.
I did have, are you proposing any signage there, or is that not?
Signage for the site?
Yeah,
We do plan on to have signage,
okay.
but we don't have it available. Is that correct?
We do have something. Not,
Not today?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We will be bringing
Forthcoming,
forward signs.
all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board tonight?
Just want to say thank you for addressing all of our concerns. I think you guys, in good faith, have done a nice job of taking our feedback into consideration and applying it to the design.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yep, that's what we tried.
So, moving forward to our next meeting, the only topic that's really outstanding is the definition of that petro barrier and the review from,
The review from
Are you
engineering.
a witch? Did you just pull that out of my head? So,
And
yeah,
signage.
it sounds like the actual construction detail of the petro barrier in the catch basin, any detail you can get was what I have on my list, is really the only thing that you folks have identified as needing.
And signage.
Yeah, I believe that they identified where the sign is, which is
Right.
which is essentially what you're looking at in this process. The vertical design of the sign is nice to see, and everybody feels warm and fuzzy looking at it and smiling that that's going to be on the side of the road, and you know you have a new business. But, you know, we don't have the ability to regulate content, color, et cetera, of the sign. So really, we're looking at the horizontal orientation, which, if I'm not mistaken, is to the north side of the driveway. But it'd be nice if they brought in a warm fuzzy picture to put an exclamation point at the end of this. So I guess I would leave it to the applicant to identify what a reasonable time frame to turn around information from the manufacturer was, because I would expect you'd need about a week once you received it, Jeff, to pour through it. And so, you know, we meet in 3 weeks on the 14th, and then we meet again in 5 weeks on the 28th. Okay,
So March 14th?
that would be the next meeting.
Yeah. I think we, yeah, I think we can go with the 14th.
okay. So is there a motion from someone to continue to the 14th of March?
Move that we continue the meeting to the 14th of March.
Second.
35, of course.
Yeah, that'll be a busy night, but we should be able to wrap this up quickly so we could put this first.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you, Mark, can you point out where the sign is real quick?
It's not gonna.
We're at a loss.
Bring poles into it.
No, no, no. I'm just.
We want sample polls?
See one of the poles. Okay, all right.
They're small plants, hard to see.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Oh, shoot. I lost my agenda. Oh, no, here it is.
I was assuming that.
Take it out with a pole, that'd be pretty.
You guys like to send your folders back along? Are you
Yes.
bringing them home?
I'm gonna hang on to mine.
Oh, yeah, I hang on to mine, sorry.
Thank you, Jeff.
Send Sheldon Farms down there. Wipe everything right up. Took out every mailbox on the West Street.
Really?
With all that snow. Yep. Pardon me? No, there was, Highfield. If it was over.
Okay.
I'm gonna have a hard time meeting 9 o'clock.
Come on, man. You can do it.
So moving along, our next agenda item is going to be the continuation of a public hearing for Highfield Village.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was sleeping.
Right here. Oh, that's the old one? I'm sorry. Unless I stole it.
Yeah, if you want.
That's all I'm gonna say, yes. Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so start us off, this continuation meeting, the planning board will hold a public hearing on September 14th, 2015, 6:35 PM, Town Hall, Main Street, Lunenburg, to hear and discuss the definitive plan for the rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in section 5.6 cluster development of the protective bylaw of the town of Lunenburg. The application is to construct 66 dwelling units off the south side of Northfield Road between Mass Ave and Northfield Road. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Paul Haverty, Blattman, Bobrowski, Mead, and Talaman. With me tonight is John Godfrey from the applicant and Mark Piermarini from Whitman and Bingham Associates. And I think I'll turn it over to Mark to discuss what's gone on with the peer review since our last meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Pimarini with Whitman and Bingham Associates.
Hello again.
Hi. Well, I have a handout there for you. It's just an overview of the site. Couple different plans there. The overall plan just showing some information on there. The second one is a phasing plan, which I can go, I'll go over them. And the third one is a circulation plan, which I'll go over too. And I'm going to bring the mic over so I can get the. The site here is off of Northfield Road, which we have Northfield Road down here. Mass Ave is at the top of the page here. So the overall site is approximately 180 acres. The flexible development or cluster development where the lots are, and 65 lots, not 66, but is right in the middle here, this middle section. So the road comes off of Northfield. We're calling this Highfield Road, comes all the way around and loops in. So it's 6,600 feet long, 67. Then we have the small cul-de-sac Summit Circle, which we got is 537 linear feet, and Wachusett Way, 466 linear feet. I have been to the conservation once already to show, because as we come in, we're skirting going between two wetland systems there. And then up through here, we're going between two wetland systems here, trying to be environmentally sensitive. We're doing two culvert crossings on Highfield Road that span the wetlands. They're not going to disturb the wetlands. So we have gone to conservation. I'll go over that after. Again, the middle section where the cluster development is 120 acres. There's 65 lots that we're showing on there. Utilities will be... we have an easement coming off of Mass Ave with water and gas. It's going to come up through the site, loop through, of course, and go all the way out to a stub over here at Northfield. We had talked to the water department. There's a 12-inch main that we're having come basically all the way through, and then there'll be an 8-inch main that stubs off of that for this section of the road. Electric, I have it showing come off of Northfield all the way through the site. Sanitary sewer. Gravity system at this, where all the houses are. This gravity system is going to come down through the houses, come down through here. There's one crossing through the wetlands here, so there is one replication area. It's 90 square feet that I'm basically going to be pulling out and putting back in. Commission wants me to go 2 to 1, so I'm going to make it 180 square feet of replication when I replicate that wetland in that area. The sewer will then go gravity down through an easement here, down through Maple Parkway and then White Street out to a stub. There's an existing stub out here at Mass Ave to White Street. So we'll be basically bringing sewer all the way down from Maple Parkway and White Street there, this section of White Street. The front roadway here, there's no proposed development on it. There's 2 existing parcels that are going to remain here for future development. But we will have a dry sewer system laid in there. And this was shown, I know, on the original plans. A dry sewer gravity to a pump system that pumps it back up to the intersection here and then would flow back. But again, that's a future system, but it will be laid in dry for the future. Storm drainage, I have 9 detention basins. 1 there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 basins around the whole site. Again, the post-development flows do not increase from pre-development, and that was reviewed by Ross Associates. I have a phasing plan that I gave you, and on my grading plan, I do show the two, temporary turnarounds. The initial phase, I'm saying coming in down to here for a temporary turnaround, it's around 23 houses. Hold on. I have it written down. I want to make sure I get the right numbers. Correct. The second phase would be this section of roadway up in here of Highfield to another temporary turnaround. That's another 16 houses. Then the remaining 26 houses from that dead end to that dead end would be the third phase. So that's on the phasing plan. And I'd like to go through the comments now from Ross Associates.
Sure.
The last letter that he had. The first comment is on the open space. Now, the open space, we have, again, 120 acres. I calculated out as 59.43. I am short a little bit. The 0.4, I'll fix that. That's not a problem for me to fix. The biggest thing is, on the second part of it, the amount of wetlands and steep slopes in here, it exceeds 50% of the open space. Now, again, we inherited this project. I don't know what the history of it is, because I don't know if the board or somebody wanted to keep all these wetlands. There's 30 acres of wetlands that you're going to be getting, and 60 acres of open space. So I just don't know how that was perceived before, if the board was amenable to that, having that open space more than...
Predates every single one of us, so I have no opinion to it.
So we may need to look into that, because like I said, the open space, it doesn't meet that bylaw.
Yeah, that's something that I myself am concerned with, because that's, the cluster development bylaw is a very short bylaw, but a lot of it seems to hinge on the value of that open space left behind.
But one thing I want to just reiterate is, I know it doesn't meet the bylaw, but we have benefits here, and we've been approached by water that they want to use a portion of this area down here for a future well site. We're amenable to giving them a piece up here for a disinfection building by their existing water tank. We got to remember we're sewering all the way down through Maple Parkway and White Street. So I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the project as well. So I'd like the board at least to think about that too.
Can I just ask you real quickly? So we're looking at 120 acres total land.
For the cluster area, correct. I don't think so. Because again, there's parcels that are separate from it.
60 acres of that is going to be this housing, the housing units.
Correct.
And 60 is going to be open space. Okay.
You got it.
We'll get to that. Yeah, a large chunk of it is wetlands.
But,
Yeah.
I'll go, we can go back to that. Let me go through the other comments while we're here.
It sounded like he was saying 120 acres was just the house.
Ross does say that I listed waivers that I listed. I can go through those after the waivers. I did submit a list of waivers. We have dealt with the town departments, so we've gone through them with sewer and water. Number 4 is provide a certification on the subdivision plans. I mean, we'll add that to the plan. It's just a certification statement. We'll put that in. Number 5 is, it's saying if there is a need to remove a lot of overburden, then we'd have to do a Form N. I mean, it's not a plan to do that. I've graded the roads, so the cut fills are equal. So we shouldn't need that. A street light detail, I'll provide one. I would probably talk with Jack first. I don't know if the town has a certain standard light they would like, but that's fine. I can give a detail on that. I do show lights on here, so. Then we have number 7. Now, this goes into the definition of secondary and intermediate streets, which I want to go through. That's my third plan, the circulation plan. What I did is this end right here. Of course, all the houses are going to be going to this section, so I've designed this section as a secondary street, and these two, the rest of it, as intermediate. Because I look at it in the sense of, if I live anywhere from here, I'm going to go this way. I'm not going to go all the way around the loop, go to a stop sign, and go out. So I'm designing these as intermediate, secondary, and these two cul-de-sacs as minor. I just think that's how I looked at it, and I know that's what his comment is talking about. Mm-hmm. I am asking for a waiver on this piece that I'm saying is secondary. You want a 60-foot right-of-way. I'm only showing a 50. I think that reg was more for if you were doing a street and it was maybe going to be a throughway at one time and you may need to increase the width. I mean, we're not planning on doing any kind of a throughway here. The elevation change from here to here is 100 feet, so I can't ever see a road going down through there. Number 8, this is about the sewer. Again, I stated that I've just put in an E1, future E1 system. It can be whatever system the sewer commission maybe specifies. If they don't like the E1, I'm not sure. I just had put a certain system in there for future. It will have to be designed whenever that future development comes. Then we have number 9, additional details required regarding the phasing. I did, again, give you the phasing plan, and I actually have it listed in the construction notes of the phasing of it. Number 10, this is just giving you, we'll give you full design box culverts when we get to that point for the structural. Number 11 is the beginning of the roadway. As in any site, I'm coming up off of Northfield. It's pretty flat in that area. So the first 110 feet of road, I don't have any catch basins at the end due to elevation. I don't have that change in elevations out here. But what I'm planning on, if you go out there and look, there's no curbing on Northfield, so the drainage in that area comes right into this wetland anyways. So what I have is a grass channel coming off at the end of the road that'll collect the end of the road that goes, then it'll go into the wetland for that piece down here at the end. And then number 12, yes, we would be asking for these to be public eventually. That the city would take over. It's up to the board if that's what the board pleases. I don't know if you wanted the homeowners or if it would be given to the city. We're planning on giving it to the city, so for acceptance eventually, the roadways and drainage.
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just about half of that.
Yeah, sorry. Just as, we would be looking basically that these be accepted eventually.
That's about what they need to put in so that the town.
So that means all utilities, is what I'm getting at. For a detention basin, all the maintenance would be the town. And then the last 3, the traffic, I've sent these to the traffic engineer. We'll get you answers on those traffic. There's 3 questions on the traffic study that came from Ross, and I just don't have those answers right now. But and if the board likes, do you want me to read through my waivers list right now, or?
I think that'd be good.
Yeah. For the waivers.
Sorry, I just had one question regarding
yeah,
the
go ahead.
waivers. There were previously waivers in the old documents.
Yeah, I know.
Are these
are
the ones,
different.
those
Yeah,
are off the table?
Correct,
and these
yeah,
are-
they're different. I mean, there might be a couple that are the same, but they're not the same.
Right, okay. So you're not including any of the old ones
Yeah, I didn't.
that are different?
Yeah, the old subdivision, I basically went through and redesigned. There's some things I had to fix here and there, but
Okay.
generally the layout's the same.
Okay.
There's 7 waivers, and 3 of them deal with, I'd like to cluster these together. They're with existing trees. I mean, your regs have section 3431 talks about the requirement of a location of large trees, diameter trees, and requested locating of all large diameter trees. 3436 is a requirement of location of existing large diameter trees to be retained. And 461 is a requirement of no removal of trees within over 15-inch diameter outside the right-of-way. I'm not sure where these, how these pertain to a subdivision like that. You get 120 acres of woods. I show a tree line on it, so I don't know how you would. I don't know if Adam can speak. I'm not sure what they're getting at on
Through
some
the
of
chair,
these.
I saw these and I went and reviewed each of the sections in the rules and regs. I don't think 3431E applies.
Okay.
I think the way that I read that, they're looking for a noting of natural features, and it specifically calls out woodland areas, which is essentially your entire site. If you had a big clearing that had a couple of significant trees within the clearing, those might be worth noting as a feature that perhaps would be saved, something to that effect. 3436, I believe, should apply, and I'll leave it up to the board. I would like to see this done. it took me 3 or 4 times to read it to fully kind of understand what they were kind of trying to ferret out. But this is the marking of trees 6 inches or larger outside of the right-of-way between the 5-foot line and the 10-foot line off the right-of-way. So a ribbon of 5 feet wide that runs parallel to the entire length of the road, that these trees might be able to act in a manner like a street tree or provide some or other sort of natural cover. So, I'm probably going to say something very insulting to engineers, but when I see street tree plans from engineers, it looks like Wile E. Coyote's chasing the Roadrunner. It's 40 feet tree, 40 feet tree. And if you have a nice set of maples and oaks that have been on the site for 40 years, and they're only 5 feet off the edge of right-of-way, and you plop a pear 10 feet to the right of it, does that impact the way that each of them grow? Does it impact the way that it looks visually? Is there a potential to use some of those trees and plan your tree plan around it? 3436 also calls for that tree plan that I just described. Where are your street trees? What are they? What species? I think especially on this development, where it's so large, where there's so many mature trees, I think that there's a major benefit that could be seen from that. It's not an easy task. I don't think it's an inexpensive task, and I think that there might be some way to work with the board on how that gets done. Maybe there's portions of the road that it's more reasonable to do it along. That first section, you're probably going to clear the right-of-way and be done. So maybe it's not necessary to do it there. Maybe the 2 cul-de-sacs, there's so much clearing going on in there between road construction and houses that maybe it doesn't make sense there. But maybe that ring road, it's important to have this. So that's kind of what I think that's for. And then on 461, that's a tough one. Again, I think that we're probably looking more specifically in the area where the homes are, maybe where some of the catch basins are. It does call for some discussion with the Conservation Commission. Again, you're talking about 180 acres of woodland. There's probably a lot of trees out there that are 15 inches or greater. So maybe it's more important to concentrate on certain areas, and I think that that's something the board needs to discuss amongst themselves. But that's kind of how I've interpreted what's written on those 3 sections. And hopefully that gives a little bit of clarification.
Oh, no, it does. And I do show, where I show the tree line, I'm only showing where I'm grading, and then I'm trying to keep all the tree line where I'm keeping the trees. So I've showed it on the plan. But we can definitely talk about it, look at it more
Sure.
as we go on. And I do, just to piggyback on that, at the Conservation Commission meeting, one of the members had mentioned, and I actually did this just a couple days ago, is I located all the big trees in my basin areas. He just wanted to see where they were. So I got that. I have to put it on my design plan. I've located them. I have to put them on the plan. And it's really just to see if I can maybe shift a basin here or there, to get them further away from the larger trees or whatever. So I did do that right now. So, as going on to the next waiver, on section 3433, it's a requirement for groundwater contours. I did supply a lot of soil testing. I soil tested in all the basins. They range between 2 to 5 feet for depths on the groundwater. Groundwater contour, if I can do it, it's really, I'm requesting it because of the groundwater contours. I'm basically going to take these contours and just lower them, whatever it is, the average 2 to 3 feet. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I'm just requesting it because I don't know what the purpose to see the same contours just lower is going to do. If I give you the soil testing, you basically can get an idea of how deep the groundwater is. And then 345, that's the requirement for soil testing data along the roads. We did add a note to the plan that we are going to do, boring and soil testing prior to construction, and we haven't done it yet. So I put that on the plan. 4231 was what I already talked about the 60-foot right-of-way. I'm asking for that just to be 50 foot on that secondary section of road that I'm talking about at the front here, the first 1,900 feet of Highland Road. And the last one was for, again, 410. It kind of mimics the soil testing that I just talked about on, on 345. Again, I have a note saying we're going to do the soil testing and borings prior to construction. So those were the waivers that I listed. And I went through Ross's letter. I think, I could open it up to if the board has any questions. Well, I don't know if you want to have Ross speak too.
Just off the top of my head, I think Jamie had done the original proposal here. As far as the wetlands replication, I did go to the CONSCOM meeting as well. There, they said 1 to 2.
Oh, okay. 1.5 to 1?
Jamie, sorry, Jamie had said 3 to 4 at our original meeting, so.
I mean, it's a small amount. That's
yeah, he said it wasn't, he said he would have no problem making
Yeah.
it 3 to 4. But just for the sake of keeping all the information the same. In regards to the waiver on 4231, I'm probably going to ask Adam maybe for some clarification. What does it mean by, in the opinion of the planning board, will become a high-density area?
It means in the opinion of the board, is it going to meet the, I'm going to make some inferences,
Okay.
that it means the type B subdivision, which is what this is. I will go on record as saying, there's no instance that I can come up with where you need a 60-foot right-of-way for a residential road that doesn't connect to other highly traveled roads. It's a waste of land, in my opinion.
Okay.
A 50-foot right-of-way gives you room for 36 feet of pavement, 2 5-foot sidewalks, and 2 3-foot grass strips. In this day and age, we're moving away from pavement width like that. I would imagine on a road like this, if we see 28 feet of pavement, that's like, whoa, we could slow down here. And where that's not going to have houses on it, you're not going to have people parking in the road, you're not going to have people pulling out.
Right, none of these are through streets.
Yeah, I don't see 60 feet of right-of-way being necessary in any future portion of this development. 50 feet is well large enough for a right-of-way.
Okay, do you feel that since at our meeting and at the CONSCOM meeting, there was the discussion of possibly adding to it in the future, do you think that would have an effect in the long run? Or
No, I still think 50 feet would be plenty.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, 60 feet, you're talking about a 4-lane road.
Right.
At that point, and, outside of 2A, I don't think we have a 4-lane road in town.
Okay, I just wanted
Yeah.
clarification, thank you.
Do you have any more specific questions, or should we have our review engineer come up and comment?
No, I mean, we can certainly hear the review engineer.
Good evening. Mark and I have done a lot of back and forth on the project. Since Whitman and Bingham got involved, I had a preliminary review that I shared comments with Adam and with Mark. In the process of working back and forth to work through my comments. So the letter you have from me in front of you tonight is basically what's been left over from the work that they've done to get the plans to where they are now. Basically I've been through the roadway design, the lots. Essentially what I do when I get a project like this is I sit down with the zoning and your subdivision rules and regs and go through every section that applies. So a lot of the things that were commented on, and still kind of remain in my final letter, are basically, I've looked at a section, the plans maybe either need more information or don't meet a section for a specific reason. Doesn't mean I necessarily agree with the comment, but I'm commenting on your rules and regs. And that has something to do with what Adam was just discussing with you with the 60-foot right-of-way. Absolutely, a 60-foot right-of-way is not necessary here and unheard of. So, I'd agree with Adam wholeheartedly on that. We've been through beyond your rules and regs and the zoning. We look at it from a general engineering standpoint. Do things make sense? Are they designed adequately, correctly? Do they meet normal standards? So we've done that as well. We've also gone through the stormwater to see that it meets the Mass Stormwater standards, general engineering guidelines. Do we have reductions or no increase in flow? Do we meet the stormwater standards? So I've been through all of that. I'm satisfied with the development as a whole from both standpoints, from the rules and regulations as well as from the drainage standpoint. We have not gone through the subdivision in terms of any conservation issues. If there were glaring things, I might comment on it, but generally we don't get into those issues, again, unless I see something that's glaring, and I didn't. Some of the comments that I've got out there, Mark went through. I think I wanted to just touch back on a couple of them. Where are we here? Number 7 on page 2. Again, this had to do with the classification of the road. Under the definitions in the subdivision rules and regs, I commented that Highfield Road meets the definition of a secondary street. And under that classification, there's certain criteria that you have to meet, minimum centerline radius and so forth. And I think what Mark didn't say is, or he did, is that the way he's interpreting that section is that half of the traffic is going to use one side of the loop, half of the houses will use the half they're on for the most part. So again, and going back to, I comment basically on something, just strictly on what the regs say. I think Mark's interpretation makes some sense, and I think you could interpret it that way. So that would be number 7. So I think essentially, while the regulations say so many trip ends trigger, secondary street, I think the argument that, half goes one side, half goes the other, so it doesn't necessarily meet that, makes sense. So I guess I can agree with Mark on that. In relation to number 11, which is the drainage at the end, or rather the beginning of the new subdivision. Originally, that drainage was being addressed and there were some things that were done. I had some comments on that design. It was basically relying on swales and getting the flow across the street, and it didn't work because we have a sidewalk. You don't want flow from one side of the street crossing the street. So at this point, that end of the street doesn't necessarily meet the stormwater standards for treatment, as you don't have a catch basin with a sump and then a 4-bay. So I don't know if we can look at that a little bit more. But that's as a result of our comments back and forth, and I think it just needs to be looked at. I think that's really it. I really don't have anything that I'm too concerned with at this point. I think Mark's tried to address those comments. I know there's some other things. Are there more revisions coming? Is there another revision coming?
Well, for the Conservation Commission, like I said, I'm going to look at shifting some of these basins further away from the wetlands, so that'll be a revision I do. So there'll be some minor things right now. I was kind of waiting to meet with the board first, see if we had any times and incorporate them all.
And I guess if the board had any questions for me, I can answer them.
I have a question. Are you familiar with the previous plan before Whitman Bingham took it over?
I certainly am.
You are. Would you say that this plan is considerably different from that plan?
The development as a whole, no. I mean, the design is, I think we're one less lot at this point. Was it, I think the original plan was 66, we're 65 here. I think in the previous set of plans, I had some issues with some of the lots. Some didn't have sufficient area, some didn't have sufficient frontage. All those things have been addressed. I haven't laid one plan on top of the other to see, if things have shifted one way or another. I basically looked at it from start again, just to make sure everything, met the rules and regs. So while I can't quantify the differences, I'm sure there are minor differences, but as a whole, I mean, the concept of the subdivision is essentially the same.
Essentially the same.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board before we go to the public?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Are sidewalks required under the bylaw? Because in the original waiver request, it says, reference subdivision regulations, section 5.4, sidewalks.
You said 5.4?
That was the original. Yes.
Okay, so section 5.4 is design criteria. So they were providing sidewalks, and they were asking for a waiver from the construction standard of the sidewalk they were providing.
Okay.
Under section 491, sidewalks shall be provided on one side of each street for the full length of major streets. Sidewalks shall be provided in the vicinity of pedestrian generators on major and secondary streets as required by the planning board and in any area determined by the planning board to be a high-density area. So it's not a major road.
Mm-hmm.
So they're only required as the planning board determines. They're not explicitly required in all subdivisions per 491.
Okay, and with the intent of it going to the town, do you feel that would be beneficial to have sidewalks or not have sidewalks?
I do have sidewalks on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do have
Oh, all right, I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's my fault, I forgot to mention, but I have one sidewalk on all roads.
Okay.
Even better.
All right.
Then yes, we should have
Question
sidewalks.
answered, then I guess. Okay.
You saved me a very difficult answer.
They even go all the way down to Northfield, right?
So you're still working on this together, is that right? You have not addressed these.
Address that last piece.
What about the 110 feet of drainage onto?
I'll look at that. I mean, again, we're getting to a point where elevation change, I'm having an issue getting, a pipe system down there. I can look at it again to see. I just don't want to, the lower I go, the closer I get to the wet. So I'm trying to work back and forth. I can look at it again. It's fine.
Okay. Traffic study.
I have a question about the length of a dead-end road. I mean, effectively, this is a dead-end road, is it not, Adam?
I would say no. Having the secondary access from Mass Ave for emergency vehicles.
Hope Road?
No, this little trail through the woods out to Mass Ave that skirts the property line to the south and east of Wachusett Way, down towards Chase Road and Mass Ave, and then comes west along the rear property line of the two in-cut parcels and cuts again south onto Mass Ave.
That's this
I
little
thought
thing
that
here?
was going to be gated, though.
It's an, yeah, and the purpose of the length restrictions on dead-end roads is for public safety. It's not for resident convenience or so the pizza guy can get from this development across town quicker. It's so that in the event of a structure fire, Lunenburg responds, and they're in there and they're fighting it, and okay, we're down to embers, and oh no, we've got another structure fire. If you're on a dead-end road, or in the case that it gets blocked by tree fall or apparatus from a fire, and they need to get additional apparatus, and they need to have a second way in. So this would provide that. I'm assuming, again, big word, that it has a Knox lock on whatever gate is there. Most fire departments have a Knox lock in every truck, so they pull in, they open the little lockbox, they get out, they open it, they open the gate, boom, they're in, they go back later and lock it up. If not, they've got a 10,000-pound truck that they'll just blast the gate if they need to. So it's functionally, for the everyday person, a dead-end development. For public safety, with that path, I would not consider this a dead-end road.
I can go, again, big subdivision, so I might miss one, I think. But this is the same as from the previous subdivision. I kept it, is the connection, like Adam was just saying right here. There's a gated access right here that connects into the Pope Road. So that's for emergency access. So, and it's we're creating a gravel drive connection over there, so.
So we have some pretty major issues to discuss. Are they? Is this the time to discuss them?
Yeah, I have some major questions about the areas and the percentage of wetland and
Yeah, that's the
grade.
biggest one, which hasn't changed from the last time the plan was submitted.
I guess that's why I asked if it was considerably different, because didn't Jamie tell us a year ago, before he requested 2 or 3 extensions, that his design would be
Small?
considerably different?
Oh, considerably different.
I believe he said that his details would be considerably more complete. My understanding through this whole project is that the layout was not going to change substantially, that there was going to be a more complete and more thorough engineered design for the layout that had been in process for a decade.
I think the expectation that was made all along is that it needs to meet the requirements around the cluster development, particularly around the open space, and that has always been a point of contention. And it sounds like it's still not meeting that. So the very first thing I would look for is whatever changes are required to make that compliant, right? So that it does actually qualify as a open space cluster development via bylaw. And that's probably going to require some restructuring of the plan to gain back some open space that's not wetlands and not cliffs.
So if I can address the first question, which was the process from when we were here back in May, maybe, or June, requesting the original extension. It was not stated that there were going to be substantial changes. It was stated there were going to be substantial movement in addressing the outstanding issues, which I think at the time there was a comment letter having over 100 different comments.
156.
What's that?
156.
150, so well over 100 comments. I think that we have certainly responded to that and have got it down to a much more manageable number of comments. With regard to the open space issue, I'm going to have to say that predates my involvement in this project. My understanding is that there was some discussion during the original hearing process with regard to the benefits that are being provided by this project with regard to the area for the water department, and that was a trade-off for a reduction. But I think that we can delve into that issue further.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we have to. We can talk about the technical things all we want, but that's a glaring item to me. I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, I don't even think we can waive that requirement.
I would have to verify with the building inspector, but I would be of the mind that being a zoning bylaw, that would require relief from the zoning board. We can talk about that further and what that would mean after I have a conversation with the building inspector.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If you'd like, I can give you a ring later this week after conversing with him. I don't know if you want me to call you or Mark, but...
you can start with Mark, and then you can bring me into the conversation.
All right.
And just to follow that up from my own perspective, I don't think it's a bad plan that you have in front of us. I just think it's glaringly deficient in what the cluster development bylaw is trying to accomplish. I mean, you have the lots A and B sitting down at the bottom that are left open, you mentioned could be future development, but that's land, I think, that were added to the proposed conservation area, that might make up your difference and not require a ZBA hearing or anything like that. Just me looking at it now, there's a lot of space, a lot of good space.
think even that would make the difference.
And then, just again, to emphasize why those percentages. So for everyone who doesn't have the bylaw in front of them, it says to be a cluster development, that 50% of the land has to go towards conservation, and not more than 10% of it can be covered in wetlands, and not more than 10% can be in a slope steeper than 15%. And right now, it's, as proposed, 25%, 24.9% of the space is wetland, and 27% of the space is greater than 15% slope. So it's double the area that's called out. And it's again, very short bylaw, 2 pages. The intent of that land being left behind is to be designated as permanent open space, made by, the selection of the land to be designated as permanent open space shall be made by the applicant and shall be subject to the approval of the planning board based on the following criteria. 1, being the preservation of existing farms and or appropriateness of the land for agricultural use, which, being wetlands and steep, it's not going to fall into that. Preservation of environmentally sensitive lands, maybe we could make that argument based on it's a wetland. Again, still way off.
Preserving wetland anyway.
Yeah, the appropriateness of land for recreational uses, again, wetlands and steep land is, I don't feel meets that criteria.
Sledding hill, if there was snow.
The location of the land relative to adjacent nearby open space lands, which there is some town conservation land abutting the site. I mean, maybe if it were rearranged or reworked through some site trails or whatever, you could connect conservation land, but still, I'm not seeing that happening right now. And the area of roadway providing frontage to dwelling units shall not be calculated as permanent open space. So, and again, if you go to our design criteria for subdivisions, that section 5 you're just quoting from for the sidewalks, it has some provisions for open space, and actually specifies up to 10%, or at least 10% as decided by the planning board, can be set aside for playgrounds or open space for passive recreation. I'm not asking for a playground, but at least for the land that's being set aside for conservation to at least be useful for passive recreation, or some kinds of trails installed, or...
Can I answer that one quick? From the original plan, I am still showing a trail easement all the way through the whole open space. There are existing trails out there, which I've tried to get them wherever I could with my trail easement. So my trail easement actually comes from this intersection right here. It goes all the way around the site and then back actually right here. So I mean, I do have a trail easement in there for hiking.
And what was the part about the water department down there?
Benefits, again, water department is actually looking at this site for a future well site.
So that certainly goes to the ecological standard.
Correct, and again, they were
Preservation of
asking
ecological
for a piece
features.
of land for a disinfection building up by the water tank.
And I can't speak to anything that the water department's planning on doing. They're not a part of the town government proper, so.
But those are benefits to the
But
town.
it is an ecological feature that's being preserved, so I mean, that, you know, that
Has
is
the-
one of the issues being addressed.
Well been tested, or, I mean, if it's a, I would say it's a benefit only if it's usable.
It's for a future well site.
Yeah, there's no well, it's just a water tower up there right now.
Yeah.
And I would further Damon's point, but specify that I feel that it's more than 5 times deficient by the percentage, because if you read the 5.6.3, it says that 50% must be open space. Not more than 10% of the open space shall consist of wetlands or land underwater or land with a slope in excess of 15%.
Right, or.
So, and it's of the 50% of the total. So 60% required open space. No more than 10% of that, 6 acres, is to be wetland or a 15% or greater slope.
You took all the charming land.
You guys, and it's like 30 acres, I think, it meets that criteria, if I recall correctly, right?
There's a total
Yeah,
of 31.
approximately, 30
31.
acres of the 60 acres proposed to be open space is deficient by the bylaw, so half of it.
52.4.
So that's, I don't know how we're going to tackle that hurdle, but again, Adam needs to have this conversation.
I assume this was looked at.
Yeah, it's entirely.
So we're gonna have to.
You also renoticed it, so it's viewed in my eyes as a brand-new project.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you have the benefit of having two members being able to vote on it, so, I mean, we need to look at it from new eyes. I can't go by the information that was provided before I joined the board.
Well, I also looked through the old files and minutes. I think that you can't necessarily rely on that, but understanding if there was a conversation and what the logic behind that was, while it might not sway you, it might not change your opinion, it will at least inform you on why it's at the point that it's at.
Are you familiar with such a thing? Because I don't recall seeing that.
Familiar with such a thing?
From the previous
It's not ringing a bell about...
I don't remember seeing anything about a trade-off on the open space in exchange for water rights. Or
No, I know we've talked about the well site. I know that that's been brought up, and I know that the water district has been interested in having additional potential well sites. But I guess what I'm talking about is perhaps when the project originated, there was a conversation about habitat areas, connection with existing open space, value of ecological resources. Perhaps these wetlands and the area around them are of particular benefit based on where they are and the connection that they provide to a wetland system upstream and downstream. I don't know that that's the case, but
I guess,
these are the kind of things that may have...
Again, they wouldn't be able to build on the wetlands anyways.
No, they wouldn't, but preserving the additional land around them, and I know, we're talking about significant slope here.
They couldn't have built there anyway.
No, I know. I'm not saying it's logical or makes sense, but understanding what the previous conversation was at least informs why we're where we are.
Okay, yeah. So I guess we made it clear that's a major issue for us. First things first, I think you need to have that conversation with the building inspector or zoning officer to make sure it's even something this board can waive.
Sorry, I do have the old waiver request, and it says as discussed in the preliminary plan meetings with the planning board and its review engineer, the applicant requests a waiver of guideline of maximum 10% of open space being wetlands or slope over 15%. The project has a total area of 124.6 acres.
And what was the result?
They didn't, I don't think they made, it just
I think if we got to the point where they were voting on the waivers, we wouldn't still be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, number one, before we can dive into the discussion too much further and talk about something we might not even have authority over.
Right.
I want a determination from the zoning officer to make sure that's up to us to decide.
Right.
And then we can discuss the merits of that land.
Just to repeat, that was a preliminary plan submission.
Right,
And
right,
now
right.
we're at the definitive level.
Yeah.
I really don't think that this is worthy of a definitive submission at all. I mean, considering that
Well,
huge discrepancy
I think
alone.
that whether it's worthy or not, we're at a point where we're dealing with a project that's been submitted as a definitive for 7 years and has been in some manner or other in front of this board for almost a decade.
Not this board, but this
This body, maybe not this particular iteration of the planning board, but the planning board of the town of Lunenburg for a decade. I think without consultation of the zoning officer, it would be imprudent of us to turn this away on its face now. I
don't disagree, but I think we should consider it.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing that that's something that could potentially be a failure, but depending on who has authority over that bylaw, how it gets adjudicated, there may be a path forward that goes through another body. And whether that body chooses to act in consultation with this board or of their own authority would be another discussion to have.
Again, this, as you said, Matt, the plan hasn't changed, so they really like this plan, so.
Who really likes this?
The applicant really likes this plan. So I think what we would see is maybe a modification of this one, and certainly not throwing it out.
Right.
My assumption.
And I also have to believe at some point, they were led to believe that there was some validity to this plan. Knowing that they requested a waiver, what the history of leading up to that was, I think, may provide some further insight.
Okay, so I think we'll get the answer to that question, and we can pick up the topic of the conservation area next time, but move along to the other portions of the project right now, if that's okay. Is there anything else from the board you'd like to ask questions of before we go to the public and get their input?
I do have one question, if the
You
board
go,
is,
please.
if the board is done.
Oh, my other questions were with regard to the trees and the review engineer's report. But is that something we're prepared to go over now, or?
Well, are you asking me, or are you asking the review engineer?
No, I'm asking, I guess I'm asking the chairman.
I suppose, I guess I'll get input from Adam. Do you think we're at the point where we're ready to talk about waivers right now, or should we continue to gather
No.
information?
I don't think we are.
Well, my feeling is,
No, that's what
you
I'm
can
asking.
always talk about waivers. There's always room to talk about them. I would suggest that you don't vote on waivers until, you're splitting hairs over conditions, construction hours,
Exactly.
and the project is, within an inch of moving forward. If you want, I'll run through the 7 waivers and give you my thoughts. I think the first one doesn't apply, as I said. The whole land is woodland. All he has to do is draw the woodland bubble and say, there's my woodlands. Groundwater contours, if he's done deep holes, we have that on record. That, I think, is not a big deal. 3, 4, 3, 6, I stated earlier, I think is something that would be beneficial to the finishing of the product, of the project. I think it will make a better project. The board can certainly talk about waiving portions of the road for that. Soil testing along the proposed roadway. I think that we end up with an Arrow Estates situation. If he wanted to do soil testing, he's going to go in there and blow out all those roads, and you're going to end up with trails through the woods, whether he does the project or not. If he's going to do he's going to have to do them at some point. I don't think that it changes the design of the product or the project. 60-foot right-of-way, I already told you what I think about that. The 15-inch diameter trees, I think it's worth having the conversation with conservation about. I think that, again, there is some discussion that can be had. And the groundwater observation, I would say this is the same as the other test pits and borings along the road. The one caveat to waiving those, when they are done, I'd suggest it's to our benefit to have our review engineer there for all or a significant portion of them. I don't think the project engineer is going to falsify or incorrectly identify, but with things like that, soil evaluation is kind of a dark art, and different practitioners have different opinions, and sometimes having 2 eyes on it, that difference of opinion can lead to benefits for everybody. So, again, it's a protection for both parties, and it just keeps record.
So again, I really didn't want to vote on any waivers tonight, but do you have any
No,
other
no,
questions?
No.
It's fine. That's what I was asking for. I just wasn't sure where everybody was on that.
Okay. Yeah, and just, I guess, a quick question, Adam, on the 15-inch trees and the way you're talking about waiving it for portions of the project, I don't have the grading plan in front of me as far as what's existing, what's going to happen, but I assume a lot of it, there's so much cut and fill proposed that they couldn't save those trees.
I would say in most instances, you're correct.
I mean, I would, in my mind, everywhere where they're not doing substantial cut and fill, the tree should stay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So if there's maybe that guides how we begin to talk about that conversation.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable approach.
I went on the site walk with the Conservation Commission, and there was a general concern for the amount of large trees within the areas that were specifically for the basins, because that's what the Conservation Walk was for. There were certainly a great number of very large trees in that area. So the lack of an identification would not give anybody the ability to specify that should be saved. So if they're not identified, then there's no way to say, oh, well, that one could be saved if the grading was a little less, or if something, you know. And I think that within the limit of clearing, they should be identified.
And again, I think that's a reasonable approach. And I think that's what I'm talking about is
That's what I thought.
looking at something that saves the 15-inch trees or identifies them, but doesn't have a forester out there for 6 months walking 180 acres with, you know,
survey crews
5,000 feet of orange tape.
Mr. Chairman, one other question? Oh, sorry, please.
On those trees, I mean, could we put a note saying as we do, I just don't see it reasonable to try and locate every tree over 8 inches within the right, I mean, you're talking about 3 times what it costs to do the whole survey.
Honestly, I think within the right-of-way is, you know, we get a little tight, but I think that's something
I mean,
the
it's up
board
to the
needs to
board, but I
discuss,
just-
yeah.
When you have a
I
wooded
did the walk
site, when you have a
too.
woodland site, you're gonna be going.
I know, but a lot of it has already been cleared, so it's not like it's a complete forest. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I agree.
where they've already cleared, they should be pretty easy to identify those trees as.
Just,
Yeah, and to be clear, it's 15-inch diameter trees, so it's
yeah,
a pretty big tree, pretty old tree.
yeah.
So again, just as we go forward with the discussion, I think that any one of them that can be saved, and maybe, like you're saying, it can be handled in a note, certainly that's quite a few trees to be going out there and tagging on a plan. We wouldn't be able to read the plan, I don't think. But that's my feeling on that.
And just in the way of general information, can you share what happens legally to the land that is designated open space? Does it transfer ownership? How does it?
The bylaw gives a couple different models.
Okay.
Was the applicant proposing it goes to town conservation, or that was the model?
Usually we're up to, if the board suggests conservation, I know I talked to the conservation, you know, when I was with conservation, they would be in, you know.
So placing a conservation restriction
Yeah,
property.
with, our bylaw says that the applicant decides. That's how most bylaws are written. It gives 3 models. It goes to the town, it goes to a nonprofit whose charge is land protection and conservation, or it goes to a homeowners association. The third of those is just the absolute worst. It's awful. And not because homeowners associations are bad, well, some people are gonna die on that hill, but, it assumes that the documents are written correctly, they're attached to property correctly, they follow onto the deed, they follow the property. I've seen numerous situations where well-intentioned planning boards and developers attach property to homeowners associations that, for some reason or another, fail, and the homeowners association becomes a voluntary event, and they barely scrape enough money together to do their annual business, never mind actually maintain or care for the land. So, from my perspective, that's the least attractive. Whether it's the town, whether it's a land trust of some sort, kind of go either way. If it goes to the town, I don't see any reason placing a conservation restriction over it would be a problem. If it were to a homeowners association, I would say that's something that the board would absolutely want to require. With a land trust, usually whenever they take land, they attach a CR to it. So it sounds like the applicant's willing to do whatever the town feels is most appropriate. And whether it's a land trust or the town, I think is kind of 50-50. You know, the town owns it, they've got to maintain it. They own that liability, they own that responsibility, but they also then offer access. You collect and maintain that property along with whatever other properties you have. Land trust, they try to do the same thing, but they do it in a different way. Either way, it ends up non-taxable, so no one's really getting a benefit or a detraction one way or the other.
And just to clarify, maintenance is, the maintenance is the road and the drainage structures? I mean...
No, we're talking about just the conservation
Right,
portion of the
just
land.
conservation is just open land.
Yes, but
that does bring up the point about, I was going to bring up about the DPW and the transfer of the roadways and the drainage. Have we heard from the DPW on anything?
No, I actually have a note to follow up with the director and send him the O&M plan again to have him review and make sure that it's something he's comfortable and capable of looking at and maintaining.
Okay.
And, you know, I think that, again, with most communities, the answer is going to be, I'll do my best.
I should think he'd seen it in the last 10 years.
Well, I'm sure he has. Whether his recollection of what's in it and what his capabilities are at this point as opposed to 5, 10, 3 years ago are probably somewhat shifting.
Does that also mean that the town maintains that emergency access path?
Yes.
So they plow that all winter long? Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Not for now.
All right.
Public.
I'd like to give the opportunity for the public who showed up tonight to say whatever they would like to say.
Yeah, I'm Dennis Hirsch. I'm at 915 Northfield Road. My property lies within this area right here, and it's the majority, it's 7.35 acres. And the entire perimeter here borders on the Highfield project. My concern is...
Sorry, sir, could you please speak in the microphone?
My concern, I went to the conservation meeting that was held, the last one was held, and it was brought up by Mark that there is going to be further development in this area here, I think that's Lot A, and that borders right on my land. And several of the people, I don't know if Gregory remembers or not, of the board, didn't realize there was going to be further development there. There were a couple of people there, and I didn't know that either at the time. And I talked to my attorney about this, and he feels that I have a right to a fence that extends all the way around my property. The line goes right through here. But I'd rather see this land here not developed any further, and that the only project, what they show here is the only project allowed to go forward, and that the project, the Lot A and even Lot B stay as, conservation land, rather than further development will encroach on me, rather than putting a fence up there. So Damon sort of stole my thunder when he brought that up, and I'm glad this is going to be YouTube. So my lawyer couldn't come tonight because I only found out about this the hour before it happened. I gave him a call, and he lives in Manchester. So I'm going to have to get the address, the URL, the address for where this is going to be so he can take a look at it. But I sort of feel if the project is going to go ahead, if it is going to get approved, it should be what they have right up there and not something in the future that's going to encroach on my land. So that's pretty much what I have to say, and that I want to find out, the space. I've seen several maps, and the spacing here between the project now seems to be a lot larger than the maps I've been looking at. So I don't know if this is true representation or the maps that I've been seeing online, and there's two online that have different dimensions. But
I think it's a good idea to keep that as conservation land rather than for future development. And a lot of people didn't really, like, at the meeting, at least two of the board members didn't realize it till I spoke up after hearing Mark say it. So it's future development. If future development, I'm going to need a fence, but if, but if it's not, then it's not necessary. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of it is.
That's not wetlands down there?
Over here?
Yeah.
No, it's mostly.
Is there a conceptual plan for the future development, or is it just a parcel that's being reserved that would require an additional subdivision approval?
Not necessarily. It's, as soon as that road is accepted,
A&R.
that could be A&R lots.
Right.
And that's why I'm asking if there's a conceptual.
I agree with you, but A&R lots, I mean, what size lots are we in, 40,000 or, I can't remember.
Well, that's what it's hard to tell from here how large that is. I'm assuming it's 20 acres.
I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I'm just saying, if there were, let's say, future development was A&R lots, you're not talking about, I don't think a lot of lots, honestly. But I don't know what the future development.
Yeah, Lot B, which is the one next to the big detention basin there, is mostly wetland, but it's 20 acres, and Lot A on the other side is 15 acres.
Yeah, so.
So currently, that is not part of the proposed 60 acres of open space.
No, the land is not.
And it's not part of the project, and my client is not actually purchasing that, doesn't own it now, never will own it. So we don't really have any control over what happens.
Oh, okay, so
That is being carved out.
the road's just going past it.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Being carved out? I don't understand that term.
Those lots are going to be created as part of this process.
And who are they going to?
Parcels, correct.
Those parcels are going to be created as part of this process. It's going to be an easement to allow the road to cross those parcels to get to the upland. We're not purchasing the fee. Can you show exactly where we are purchasing?
This is we're purchasing right here. We have this.
Oh, so you don't even own those lots? Those lots are,
Today you own them, right?
Correct.
you own them today, but you're not going? Do you-
No, we don't own any of it today, correct? It's all under a purchase and sale agreement.
So you have an agreement for the easement to create the
Agreement to
roadway.
purchase the area that the development is on, and along with that, an easement to cross over.
To create the
Lots
roadway.
that'd
Who
be-
are you buying it from?
What
can
about-
then do an A&R and some of those other two?
Correct. We don't have any control over that. We weren't offered the opportunity to purchase that.
So now the open space thing is even more glaring to me that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
All right.
right.
all right.
1,900 feet of frontage on both sides.
Okay, is there any
Plenty of frontage.
Plenty of frontage.
other comments from the public?
Yeah, Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I just want to, I don't know if it has anything to do with this board or anything else, but since it's on the plans, I want to just add some information regarding the line, the sewer line that goes from the property you now just talked about through those other lots A and B. We begin with the Highfield developers have been working very well with the sewer commission for years, trying to get this all worked out, and it is a great benefit to the people down White Street and Maple. But there is one subtle change, and I don't think it's significant, but it's a little scary. The sewer service area stops where that line is, up here. So below that line is not in the sewer service area. And we worked very hard, with the developer to get the gravity to go out the other way, because we are dead set against adding any more pumps. Our customers are already drowning in pump costs. But they asked, and we had no control or anything, but they asked if it was okay to put a dry line down there for maybe future expansion. And we did express to them that there is no intention of expanding the sewer service area in that area. The CWMP didn't support it. And there's no need down there, so there's no expectation at all that we would ever provide sewer to that particular area. So I'm a little surprised now that there's a pump showing up on the plan in that area, and I would suggest that it get pulled off, just so that we don't confuse anyone, that there's any implication that we're going to be pumping sewer up that line. So I just want to make that comment.
I can answer.
I mean, again, it's just an area for a future, I'm not designing it or anything. It's just showing an area that if that sewer district ever gets expanded, they're gonna need a pump to pump back up to the gravity.
Do you still want to put the dry lines in? I'm just a little confused.
This is-
You'd be improving
and
property
this-
that you
I'm-
don't even own.
This isn't even changed from the original plan. It's exactly what they showed on the original.
And that's part of the purchase and sale agreement. We're not required to actually provide sewer to that area. All we were required to do is put the dry lines in. And if it happens for the owner for future development, good for them. If it doesn't really change our project at all. We have to comply with the terms of our purchase and sale agreement.
So,
And I guess,
well,
Make it
at
more
the
desirable.
Conscom meeting, that the retention basin in the front there was made to accommodate for future expansion. It seems as though you're making a lot of allowances to accommodate future expansion, but then you're saying you're unaware that there's going to be any.
I agree, but all I do is I take the area, I divide it by whatever, and I give a number to the impervious. You know what I mean? So it's basically designed.
To be fair, we're not saying we're not aware that there's going to be anything. Certainly, if the current owner of the property wants that area reserved rather than selling it to us and is asking for a dry sewer line, we're aware that they want to do something there. But it's not part of our development. We're not involved in it. We have no control over it.
so.
Right, but shouldn't they put in the sewer line then?
Well,
They can do whatever they want.
that's part of the cost of
deal.
purchasing the property.
Instead of cash, the construction costs and design costs of the sewer line are swapped. I would suggest the board may wish to have the references to the pump station stricken from the plan, only to remove any inference that they're endorsing or accepting that that pump station is approved, allowed,
Right.
required, or part of the development, because in my conversations with a variety of people, it seems that the pump station was originally included as part of what was submitted to the sewer commission. There was some haranguing and conversation back and forth, and it was eventually removed for the reason that that portion wasn't in. And I just think that in the spirit of that discussion and being out, it's this board's duty to go along and say, well, that pump station isn't really endorsed right now. In 50 years, maybe everyone needs sewer and we're putting pump stations in, but I would
So-
just make that recommendation.
So we can take a look at that, as long as
Yeah.
it doesn't violate our PNS agreement. I don't see why
Yeah,
that's.
no, I am, you
Again,
know,
it's not actually part of this development.
yeah, and like I said, you set asides and calculations are great. I just think the reference to the plan is not
Understood.
necessary.
And just another point of clarification, is that lower thing that looks like a drainage basin, is that just an easement, or is that something servicing your proposed development?
This,
Yeah.
it's servicing the road drainage, and again, I've oversized it for, like I said, I took the area divided by how many houses could fit in it, and I roughly sized a basin that could work for.
So you have an easement for that?
Correct, yeah.
Or will have an easement.
You will have an
You
easement.
can't create the easement until the property's sold,
Yeah, okay.
otherwise they're giving themselves an easement. Can't do that.
Fun legal stuff.
Is there something, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, is there something, or is there anything wrong with servicing that much drainage on somebody else's property to make a subdivision?
Not if
or-
they're going to sign an easement for you.
No.
I mean, if someone's willingly giving you the right to use their property for that purpose, and they're recording it at the Registry of Deeds, and it meets all the necessary legal parameters, no, there's... Would I want a giant detention basin on my 20-acre pieces of property that I might develop in the future? Maybe not, but I'm assuming, again, that the person who owns the property has made a deal in good faith and has full knowledge of what this means and has some scheme going forward in whatever period of time they've so decided, but it's clear that they have thought this out with the way that they've reserved land for themselves.
Yep.
Would be my input.
All right. Excuse me? Yeah, public comment?
Phyllis Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. This drawing is confusing to me now because it seems like it's not the whole parcel as laid out, that the line should be up here someplace?
I suppose, yes, that's that's
What we're
the
getting
feeling that
to.
I'm getting.
So I guess I would request that the next time they appear, the parcel is laid out showing what they actually, because, I mean, that makes the cluster even more horrendous.
Yeah, it makes showing that on the plan makes the open space look much more generous than it is.
Right, right. It seems, deceptive to me.
It's not deceptive. This is my overall plan that I colored up. All the subdivision plans are in there. They show what parcels are which on the subdivision set of plans I have. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't draw one. I'll draw it next time. But I mean, it's not being deceptive. I'm just trying to show conceptually what the subdivision plan.
But it isn't the subdivision.
And even the portion up closest to Mass Ave, do you own that as well, or is that?
This piece is, again, the subdivision goes up to here. So
Okay.
this piece is a commercial piece. It's parcel C.
Yeah, my understanding was that was always reserved for commercial development in the future.
Okay, but that's not,
So that's.
again, not part of this
Correct.
subdivision.
Those areas are not part, and it's, again, in the.
Well, I think that we need to be careful about saying it's not part of the subdivision, because
Not part
the
of the open
totality of the land involved
Right.
is from Northfield Road through the woods to Massachusetts Ave.
Correct.
There are 3 parcels that are created through the approval of the subdivision that will not be owned by JGE Holdings, will not be part of the residential development of Highfield Village, but ultimately are part of the division of land for the subdivision. So, not saying they're not part of the subdivision is true and not true, because it,
Without that
Correct.
land, they wouldn't be able to.
correct, because they're all part of the original parcel
Right,
collection.
right,
Yeah, but not part of the
Right, but-
percentages when we start talking about
Correct,
cluster.
correct.
But there's very little land available for open space if they marked it off, I mean, I was assuming that piece on the top was available for open space.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't look
The
like
bottom.
50/50, does it?
It certainly doesn't.
It's, I'm shocked, really.
I drew all the polylines, so it's what.
Okay.
To the casual observer.
It's deceptive. It's deceptive.
Okay.
For clarification, Adam, on the open space, they're all basic, roughly 30,000 square feet. With, is any of that per lot used as open space, or is it?
No,
So
no,
none of
that can't be.
Okay.
Because
what I thought,
that's
yeah.
going to be conveyed in fee
Right,
ownership
right.
to the person.
So
that-
nothing
that
within
constructs-
those house lots
No.
can be
So
used as...
this person could build a regular development, just put houses in there. They would be many fewer houses because they'd have to meet
Would appear that way.
standards.
I don't know that you would say that they would have many fewer houses. It would be a very different development.
So they do
They're-
have the option to develop that land, and if they
Oh,
are
certainly.
denied a cluster.
I think that the idea of cluster development in general is to take the same amount of houses you would get from conventional development and put it on a smaller footprint. The thought being that by doing that, you reduce infrastructure, and that's a smaller cost for the developer, but it's also a smaller cost for the community in the long term to maintain and rebuild. And it provides the preservation and transfer of open space.
Theoretically.
Well,
I think...
yeah, well, it does preserve open
Does
space.
563B, because that talks about it, a site can be developed in lots with a minimum of 5 acres each, and each may not have more than one dwelling, so they could do 5-acre lots with
That's
one
the
house.
alternative to the
Right,
cluster.
right, so to get around the percentages, they could do that, so I think that's where,
So the
The way-
developer has an option.
right, they do.
Okay.
They could do 5-acre lots with one house per lot.
Well,
And not have to deal with the percentages
yeah, no,
of the wetlands. and-
yes, but they could do a regular subdivision.
Right, right.
In which case it would be.
A conventional, they'd do 40,000 square foot lots, they'd
Right.
have to have,
Right, they would have to make the lots bigger.
yeah.
So, I mean, hypothetically, if they, I mean, they might be able to squeeze in some lots on that steep area, but at most, it'd be 25% less units, right, theoretically? Going from 40 to,
Well,
30 to
maybe,
40.
I mean, I have to imagine that somewhere along the line, they drew out a conventional on this and said, it doesn't work, I'm having a heart attack between the cut and fill and making it all work. Let's do a cluster and see if we can get them to buy in. Again, that was 10 years ago. Where that history went and what it is, I couldn't even speculate on. But in general, the cluster's identified to reduce infrastructure costs for the developer and the town in exchange for the preservation of environmentally sensitive or recreationally attractive land.
Usable open space.
And it's not always useful. It depends on the community, it depends on their approach, it depends on the land. Many communities have provisions for land that has a benefit outside of passive or active recreation, habitat, waterfront protection, wellhead protection, water source that kind of stuff. And again, it doesn't specifically outline that in our bylaw, so.
No, but it specifically says, the percentage that can be
It does, yes, it
sloped and
does.
the percentage that
Yes,
can be wet.
And most do, and most use that as a general rule of thumb, and then add exceptions for specifically, or for specific items, or for land deemed to be exceptional. Again, we don't have that, but it is something that you see in clusters.
Yeah, it just seems like it's just so under what it should be. I had another question, or comment, that he mentioned that not all of the drainage is going to meet mass stormwater standards, and I thought that, I would hope that this board would not allow less than what meets
The minimum.
the minimum mass stormwater standards. I mean, there's, with all of the new regulations that are coming down on the town regarding stormwater, we can't start letting people be able to do less than the minimum.
I'm not sure we're allowed to.
We're not.
We're not.
Not on new development. And I think
Oh,
that,
okay.
I think that comment was in reference to just that small portion of the beginning of the road, the 110 feet.
Whatever.
Well, and, but I think that it was more a point that we have this 110 feet that still needs to be addressed in some way because they're not meeting those standards.
Oh, okay. So they have to do something.
Correct.
They're admitting they need to do something
Correct.
else. And, I hear it mentioned a lot that this has been in process for a very long time. I don't have the understanding that the planning board has been dragging their feet.
No,
Okay.
not in the last 4 years that I've been.
Well, correct. But again, I
I mean,
think,
things have been slow, but sometimes I feel, it sounds like, well, geez, we got to get this going because it's been going so long, but it's not actually the planning board's issue.
no, and I don't mean to intimate that, but also, if the developer has pursued a project for a decade, at the genesis of that project, and, and I say this in reference to the fact that we're looking at a very specific issue with the cluster and the open space. At the genesis of the project, there must have been some conversation around that because it was identified in the previous set of waivers that that was an issue.
But I think you're making assumptions.
Again, and that's why I want to look at it, but
Right,
I think that we need to do all of our due diligence before we dismiss the project in hand on that case, because if at the genesis of the project, someone from the town in an official capacity led the developer to believe that that was an issue that could be waived, that it's a project that should be pursued, even though there's a failure of that bylaw, we run the risk, without doing our due diligence, of negligence of a town official and an appellate process that would cost us not only money, but leave the development approved as it is anyway. So doing the due diligence prior to dismissing it, I think, is just the most important thing, and that's what I'm trying to get across, is we have to be judicious about moving this project forward 10 years on, whether it's dismissing it or finding the reason that it's gotten to this point based on that, and finding the happy medium that satisfies both the town and the applicant.
No, I firmly agree that you have to do due diligence, but it feels like you're making big leaps that I'm not seeing any basis for at this point.
Yeah, maybe, this has been a 7-year process, or 10-year, how long?
I think the definitive 7, I think that the preliminary was filed in 2005.
So I've been up here the longest, at almost 3 years now. And in that 3 years, the first year, I don't think I heard about it once. And then we had one presentation from the last engineer. And this is realistically the first presentation I've gotten from this engineer. So it's still almost new to me. It's been extension after extension. So we, as far as dragging our feet in a process, we haven't had anything to process, really.
I didn't think so. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Name's Robin Brito, 897 Northfield. I live on Northfield, a couple houses from Josie, going eastbound, and I'm worried, we had brought this up before about traffic. And there was supposed to be a traffic study done. Of course, we had a new set of people. The last one was, I didn't think it was appropriate enough. It only covered the last 3 years, and she made a claim that it was just fender benders. Well, I lived there, I've been there since 1990, and I've seen some serious accidents here on Route 13. Fatalities, I've been involved with, taking people out of, broken vehicles, broken people, and I really, when something like a project like this goes on, like, let's say like Walmart, who put the satellites in front of Walmart? Did the town pay for that, or did Walmart pay for that? That's a question.
State, actually.
The state paid for it? So I'm wondering somehow that, because I believe in building, I grew up in a contracted family, and they have a right to build. I mean, you have the standards that they have to meet, with all the boards and all that. But I'd like to see a set of lights on Route 13. Just because the extra traffic, we've had this discussion before, the extra traffic is going to be detrimental, and there's going to be more people killed there. How much does a set of lights cost to a human life? And it's going to happen. It's going to get worse. Now, on the other side of Northfield, where West Townsend Road is, put up a 4-way stop sign. There's so many accidents that happen there because there's people coming in from Townsend, that curve is right there, there's a hill, you can't really dig out that hill so you can see around that corner, they come around too fast, people get hurt there. A 4-way stop sign would stop that. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do share your sentiment with the traffic lights and everything. 13's very busy. And I talked to Adam briefly about it, but I believe there was something on the table about them putting the groundwork in for a set of lights at the intersection of Northfield and 13. Is that still a thing?
I believe that was part of your Section 16 findings from DOT, or an agreement.
Yes.
Yeah. And to touch on the light, it'd be great to be able to put a light in where anecdotally everyone sees a problem. In order to install a traffic signal, you need DOT approval, and you need to meet what they call signal warrants. It's a threshold of traffic volume and accident volume at given intersections over a 24-hour period. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that has a PE or remembers, the previous traffic study said that they didn't meet those 24-hour warrants. And if I'm not mistaken, they were a ways off from meeting them.
Yeah, the current one doesn't either. So they redid the traffic study as per our request. So we have an updated traffic study from 2015, And it still doesn't meet the requirements for a traffic.
There were some deficiencies noted in the
Yeah, and
comments from the review engineer. And
Yeah,
I don't know whether including those would have changed the traffic.
I don't think so. I think they would probably provide the board with more information. I don't think that they're not gonna trip a signal warrant.
Yeah, that was my interpretation too, so it didn't seem like it was.
No, I just want you to know, and we will address those three.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, I guess as far as that goes, if the underground stuff is still going to be on the table, I'd like to see it documented somewhere in the plans in front of us, right? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that could be appropriate. We could sign a memorandum of understanding. It could be a condition of the approval. There's a variety of ways
That would be
to
at
do it.
Northfield 13?
Yes. And, putting in the infrastructure is a big part of the cost, so that at the point that signals are warranted, it's a matter of maybe a traffic controller, an arm, and a signal house. And that is not an inexpensive proposal, but it's much more inexpensive than installing all of the conduit, the wires, the loop detectors, all that kind of fun stuff.
Not ready to talk about that issue?
No.
I was just, if there were any other
You look ready to
comments?
talk, so I was going to let you.
Just up there to address any final comments before we finish up.
Were there any other public comments? Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board tonight before we try to move along?
Yeah, it's kind of an awkward one, but when we talk about due diligence, are you planning on putting something together?
Putting something together.
A history?
I will.
Or should I be
How much of the
rifling
history
through old
How much of the history applies?
'Cause I've done it before.
Do what?
I said, I've rifled through old minutes before.
You don't have to go. You don't have to go back too far. So,
I think
someplace in the 2005, 2006 area is, if there's anything, that's where it would be documented. Because back in either 2006 or 7 is when they requested that waiver originally.
Yes.
And my understanding is there's never been any indication that it would be granted.
No, and I think that what I would probably do, I won't do a whole project chronology. I don't think that's necessary. I think that we've focused in on one very specific item that needs addressing, and I think I would have my conversation with the building inspector, look at previous minutes and any work product that might exist in the office, and put together a memo specifically revolving around that issue, as opposed to, on this date they did this, on this date they did, because I don't think that's helpful at this point. Like Greg said, we're dealing with a new engineer, a new functional set of design documents. We're dealing with a new project. This is a conceptual issue that may have a history that should be documented in some way, and we'll kind of go on that from there.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add to that is, obviously, and I wasn't involved previously, but my client would not have been pursuing this approval for 7 years if he had been informed at any point during that time that this was something he couldn't do. So that I'm quite confident was never discussed before. And my client has been moving forward under the presumption that this was not an issue, but I understand it's something that now needs to be looked at in a little greater detail, and we will assist in doing that.
I mean, as far as the 7 years goes, we haven't had a chance to talk about it in the past 3.
Understood.
And before that, I'm sure if the conversation was had and a waiver was granted, someone would be able to produce that document, so.
And
I
again,
don't think you can-
I'm not suggesting that we ever got to a point where waivers were granted.
Yeah.
I know that there was a preliminary plan that was approved. I think this waiver was part of that preliminary approval, so I think that was the basis upon which my client was presuming that this was no longer an issue. But again, it's been brought to the forefront now, and we will address it.
You say it was part of the preliminary approval. Do you believe the waiver was granted as part
I
of
don't
the
think waivers
preliminary?
were granted as part of the
Okay.
preliminary approvals. I think the
It was
the
brought up and
preliminary
discussed.
plans were approved to the extent they said, these
Sure.
look good, come forward with a definitive plan.
Yeah, okay.
So, that could be the area of
And that's certainly where everything will start.
Okay. So I think next time, our conversation is going to start with this area issue. And before we get into any more of the detail items, I think we got to cross that bridge. So if everyone's good for tonight, we should set a date to continue to. Yes.
What works?
I guess a lot of it was a conversation between you and zoning officer. Shouldn't take too long.
No, Mark, what do you envision as far as your time frame for addressing Ross's letter, including traffic?
Yeah, those, we can have them for the next meeting. That's not an issue.
14th?
Yeah.
Is that one full?
Because the items that we're talking about, to me, are the technical ones I can address.
So you're going to come on the 28th?
Well, I mean, we still need to get the traffic answers.
Yeah.
I think the 28th,
I think the 28th
both for
probably
timing and for
Okay, no, that's fine.
being here will, I think, be more palatable. We've got Unitil coming back, but we also have some bylaw public hearings on the 14th.
Okay.
And rather than have you folks and these nice folks sitting around, we'll let 274 and Highfield battle it out on whose neighbors have to wait. But I think that'll be a more palatable meeting for everyone to sit through.
Great. So March 28th?
March 28th. I need a motion
For that?
from the
I
board.
move that we, what's it
Begin
called?
hearing, so 28th?
Yeah, what do we call it? To continue it to the 28th, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 6:35.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
You're blowing your 9 o'clock target.
Yeah, well, maybe we can make 10 o'clock. I told Adam 10 o'clock. Minutes approval.
I move that we approve the minutes from 1:25:16.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I was not here. Right?
Adam?
Correct.
Dave wasn't here?
Yeah, I don't think.
I don't believe that, that's the one I wasn't here, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was the last meeting.
No, you were not here.
I abstain.
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion for the minutes on 10, or 1:25:16?
274 I move that we approve the minutes from 274 Prospect Street from 1:25:16.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Aye.
Abstain.
A little out of order on that one.
Okay.
Punchy at this point.
Committee reports.
Oh, look, they even had a,
Building Reuse Committee, that's me.
Right. We can't make this requirement.
So I don't think I've had a chance to talk to you guys since we made our presentation to the Board of Selectmen on February 2nd. Or have I? Anyway.
I watched it. Sorry.
If you would like to see it in real time, it's on YouTube. Jamie Toll, our chairman, did a very good in-depth presentation on our findings and recommendations. If you didn't get the chance to catch the meeting, the recommendation is to consolidate town offices under one roof at the old Passios building. There's a number of reasons and plenty of information as to why we'd like to do that. That might be more beneficial for you to hear the full presentation than me to try to give a short summary. But if there's any specific questions, I can try to answer them.
No, actually, I was in agreement with the report. I mean, that was kind of what my thought was from the beginning when they started the building reuse discussions. And didn't they say the building reuse committee would report to any boards that were willing to ask them?
If you were willing, if you
no, I
hired
meant
to
as
have
a
them
group.
come here.
I think Jamie had said during the meeting they'd be happy to give a presentation. I don't think we need one, but it was a good presentation, and I think the reasons behind it were great, that it's a one-level building, and that having all town offices in the same building makes it kind of one-stop shopping.
So what is that, are you not there yet? I was going to ask, what does it mean for the Ritter in here? But you're not there yet, obviously. No.
Again, the idea would be if this is something the town signs on to and we're gonna do, then the Ritter and the town hall would be moved out of and, would try to be sold,
Yeah.
ideally. We know that there's a responsibility to the town hall that we want to make sure it stays around, but, again, it's going to be a little bit challenging to find someone to buy it, or probably going to be more feasible to have somebody, probably end up we find somebody who's just going to take it and take good care of it. There was, if things drag on too long, one of the line items we got was just stabilizing the exterior, but was almost $1 million, I think. So it's just another thing that the town would need to sign on to if there's that big of a hit to your conscience to let it go, but.
A lot of spray foam.
A lot of spray foam. I think with the job we did writing the village district and the architectural protection district, it might have a better chance in private hands than to rely on a town budget to maintain it. So, yes, moving forward, again, we can't really do too much more legwork until we get the town to really sign on to it, because clearly you can't sell the building when you're still occupying it, so it's going to be a little while, but there's some next step things that need to happen.
Yep. Thank you.
So Capital Planning Committee.
Capital planning, I believe, is done for the season till next budget season. I believe September, October, November, maybe. I don't know. We have not met. I do not expect that we will meet for some time.
Okay. Agricultural Commission.
Yes, they met last Thursday, and it was a great meeting. They had invited and were joined by Kim Mayhew, who recently hosted last Friday night the organizational meeting for 4-H in Lunenburg. So I believe it's official now that there is a 4-H back in Lunenburg that is not just for horses. It is a full-blown 4-H group. And again, Kim Mayhew started that. And if somebody needs more information about it, they can contact me and I can get it for them, or somebody on AgCom, or go to an AgCom meeting, third Thursday of the month.
I believe it's lunenburg4h.com is the
Awesome.
site for her.
Perfect. They were also joined by Jen Sanderson, who is new to the Historical Society. She's the new curator at the Society. And since they share an area where the farmers market is held and next to the Ritter building, there's going to be some coalition, some group activities planned. They were in planning stages for them between the farmers market and the Historical Society. Also, there was some indication that the Garden Club was going to be joining in. The grand opening, June 5th this year, is the first farmers market at the Ritter building.
Great.
Just in regards to that, I know there was some discussion last year about possibly moving it to the library and things of that nature. Due to the fact that the Passios is probably going to stay put, is there any
that was discussed?
Discussion? I know the insurance and the power were kind of the big issues.
Yeah, that was they had intended to transition in August, I believe, of last year, and that fell through for one reason or another. I'm not sure if it was the power or the non-access. I'm not quite sure exactly why it was.
I believe it was due to the fact that they didn't know what I knew they wanted to go to library, but the library was sort of against it, and I think they had wanted to do the Passios at one point, but the future of it was unknown.
It was very weird.
So,
the library had reached out, and
right.
I believe it was through someone here mentioned.
Right.
But yeah, that fell through.
Okay.
Damon, does the Passios include that triangle out front?
Oh yeah, another great selling point of the Passios. We had a whole metric of things, reasons why we wanted to use that building, but one of them was additional benefits to the town. And we were planning on demolishing the part of the wing furthest to the back because we don't need the whole footprint for our purposes. But we were going to retain the gym as a large meeting room or whatever else we need it for. And also the cafeteria would be retained. So that could be a great benefit as a community space. again, maybe streamlined because it's not owned by the schools, it's owned by the town, so it might be easier access for the town people to use. We don't have to worry about security and things of that nature, so.
I thought that little triangle out front would be perfect for the farmer's market and everything, you know, it's less dangerous than the the gazebo area.
Well, and with the gym, it gives you an avenue to do something indoors, so you can have it, not year-round, but it's at the same place. I don't know.
Yep, so.
AgCom, Farmers Market, our buildings team.
Right. No, I
They are
wish them all
building.
the success after the Stillman's event. I
No.
think the interest is there, that it could be a great success.
There's a lot of discussion about a public market, which is a year-round annual permanent structure.
Right.
So it's still in the works as well.
Good.
You're still up, Matt. Stormwater Task Force.
Stormwater Task Force. We've had, I think, 2 meetings since our last meeting here. The first one was not able to be held due to quorum. All right, we had the first meeting, which everybody was there, and then the second meeting, we were supposed to get a 6th or a 7th member, citizen at large, and then the second meeting, there was not even a quorum, so it was just 3 of us sat around talking. And then the last meeting was just barely a quorum. Rain barrels, we're looking at purchasing rain barrels. I believe they'll be available at the DPW. And we're still, again, second meeting was not able to be held due to quorum issues, so they're still very preliminary. Still getting our feet wet. We're going to be discussing the town's MS4 permit process and stage from 2003, which was the original, to the current 14, which is really not enforceable, I don't think, because it really has not been finalized.
It's not issued yet.
Next month, Fred Sivian is our DEP contact, and I've heard mentioned that he's said again it's going to be next month.
Yeah, well, they'll be posting next month, and then usually it'll be in force by a certain date, and then usually there's a 6-month period with which to file the application or the NOI for the Phase 2 permit.
Yeah, there's no regional stormwater coalition or group in our region. There's the Central Mass Coalition, and our closest neighbor is Sterling, I believe, in that one. And then there's North Middlesex, and I believe our closest neighbor is Dunstable. And I've contacted MRPC. They are not aware of even the potential or the discussion of forming one. Probably because a good number of the Montezut region towns aren't going to be affected by it.
Okay, MJTC?
MJTC, the next meeting is March 16th. I did review the minutes from the last meeting. There wasn't a tremendous amount of interesting stuff. They did some more work on the tip, sharing some details of projects, nothing that impacted Lunenburg directly. Then they recovered their general details that they typically do, but the one point did come up because it was brought up tonight, but the traffic count studies start in May, and so in March they'll be reaching out to Lunenburg, and we can request up to 5 locations for traffic count studies to be done on. So somebody in Lunenburg administration gets that. I'm not exactly sure who, but we get the opportunity to have 5 locations counted.
Sherry Bean would be the one to be contacted, I believe.
Is that who it is?
I think she actually goes to the MRPC meetings. I don't know who gets that. But if we can think of roads, that we should not let that go by.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for us, so if we can use it.
Great, thanks. MRPC?
Meeting tomorrow night.
Great. Open space, anything?
Nothing scheduled.
School Building Committee?
School Building Committee met on February 10th. As far as the construction update, the building is 79% complete. What they're working on, continuing to work on, is permanent lighting, roofing, light poles, elevators, bathroom fixtures. The boilers have been started and are operational, and the building automation is being worked on, and they are still doing work in the gym and in the locker room. We had a presentation in regards to having synthetic turf fields as opposed to sod fields. They gave a cost analysis, which was over 8 years, and I think we should be looking at it more over the long term of the 30 years, because of some of the costs over the long term are going to be greater than expected. But there was a lot of discussion amongst residents, and actually there was several residents that spoke on either side. And there was a gentleman who actually did golf course maintenance that gave a pretty good opinion as to the benefits of keeping natural grass. So there will be more discussion regarding that. They did take a few of the contingency items, or tabled some of them. The added parking, I think it was 30 spots. I had discussed that with Adam. And then also the sign at the entrance, they were proposing that it have like a digital display, but due to the funding, they're gonna engineer it and put the electrical in so they can add the digital part after the fact, and they're gonna just stay with the original granite sign that they were gonna go with. And then I had a question for Adam. In regards to the turf field, if they do decide to move forward with that, we need to have any input regarding drainage calculations, because they...
Something we would look at and discuss depending on what they were doing.
Okay, just to, for the essence of time, if they do, there's going to be more discussion, so I'd encourage everyone to come. I believe the next meeting is March 9th.
Yes or no?
So.
Okay. Green Community, nothing?
Still nothing. I don't even know if they're still in existence at this point. I will try and inquire through town manager as to what the status of that is.
What's the life expectancy on the turf?
Well, so natural or synthetic? Well, this is part of the thing. So they did their cost analysis because the warranty period is over 8 years. So the initial cost is high. To do 90,000 square feet would be approximately $856,000 as far as installation, but they only warranty it for 8 years. So over the course of the 30 years that we're borrowing the money, you'd have to redo it 2 to 3 more times, and now, so
well,
the first time you do
warranty it over 8 years. They said they only warranty it for 8 years. What's the life expectancy?
10 years is the life expectancy of the field.
Is this for the new fields or replacing the existing ones?
No, this is for the new fields.
What's originally in the school building project was just grass seed.
For the new fields?
For the new fields. The old field is not part of our purview, and that's going to be a capital item, and I think that was proposed to the school committee prior to this meeting.
But that
yeah,
needs to be done soon, right? That's what there's been talk of that?
That one is on its 11th year, I believe.
I was going to say,
they might be able to, and the track around it is basically...
I don't think I even got to use that in high school, and that was just 10 years ago, so...
Right. Well, and again, in the opinion of the developer, the turf fields would be the way to go if we could find the money for it. So a dome would be great if we could find the money for it, or 50 more teachers, but, I mean...
Teachers, who need
so,
you and your pie-in-the-sky notions.
But it was a very informative, and then there was also some concerns about the health effects of the crumb rubber, because basically it's crushed up tires, so they have a lot of chemical concerns and things of that nature, heavy metals, lead, things of that nature. But there was an EPA report done that they are teaming up with the CDC and disease prevention to do a study over the course of this year to determine whether or not it will have negative effects. So
compared to the fertilizer that you put on the regular turf?
Right, well, at least with the
Or the goose
fertilizer,
poop.
you can choose to put down an organic. Once the crumb rubber's down, it's down.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Some organic.
Development status reports.
He's building houses in Elmwood. He's got 3 up, and he's close to finishing and conveying. I mean, you've all seen the updates. I could
Yeah.
tell you that he's putting counters in and cabinets, and I think that's more detail than you guys
Exactly.
need.
What color?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we need to
It's
keep it on
it's a
here?
gold fleck granite.
Should I still ask you every time, or can you just tell us when it's done?
What?
Any awnings?
I'll tell you every time. He's still building houses.
We're gonna have to come to some.
On to my items. I've received a citizen petition for the rezoning of a portion of a parcel at 1026 Northfield Road from recreation to residence A. It'll be on our next meeting with the other two zoning articles. So this is an 8-acre parcel that was originally owned by the golf course. It's recently conveyed. The front is residential A, the rear is recreation. So the new owner is looking to have the parcel be zoned monolithically.
Residential.
Yeah, residential A. So you'll hear the merits and whatnot of that next week, next meeting.
They shrunk the golf course, or was this?
No, it was an ancillary parcel that was next to the golf course that
The 8th hole.
the golf course owner was kind of like, I don't know what to do with it.
Wide brush of zoning.
It's them gophers.
Notice there's a
Commercial
communication.
land is
You know,
what we need.
somebody wants-
We need more
I don't know
commercial.
if, it's either a member issue or notice of communication, so I'll bring it up now. Being in attendance at the AgCom, they've brought up, and as I have here many times, is the rewording of the general bylaw to include parcels of less than 5 acres, which since 2010 have been recognized under zoning chapter 40A, section 3, as amended 2010 to include acres of parcels of 2 or more acres, with the caveat that they make $1,000 or more per acre.
Did you say general or protective?
General. The general bylaw mentions agriculture and farming a number of times. I've got a markup that we went over at the meeting, and they felt confident that we could revise it, that we could put it in your hands and you could revise it. They felt very comfortable as long as it got updated.
They can propose.
Okay.
I mean, they're a town committee. They can propose a change to the general bylaw for town meeting.
I know. I told them that 10 people can petition for it.
They don't even need to petition.
I understand that, right.
Oh.
But I told them that there
Sure.
was...
If they feel more comfortable doing it as a citizen petition, they could do that.
Right. I just wanted to mention that it's come up in planning board before.
Sure.
And I wanted to see if planning was in support or had comments or had issue at all.
No,
Reduction from 5 to 2 acres.
From 5 acre, right.
For what purpose?
And it's for
For
zoning. It's
farming.
okay. There's a confusion too, because 40A is zoning and 61A is tax law. So our bylaw references 40A and 61A, where 61A really doesn't have any,
it doesn't have any parameters.
it's a reference to
Correct.
the way it's taxed, but the revision from 5 to 2 has nothing to do with, it would still be not able to be in 61, because 61 specifies 5 acres minimum.
Right,
Okay.
for chap,
5 to 2 for what purpose?
Agriculture, to be
For
considered agriculture. 40A
Okay,
used to say that if you had 5 acres, zoning couldn't regulate you for agricultural purposes, and you could do your agriculture thing anywhere, anyhow, anyway, as long as it was agriculture.
Yes.
With some pretty general parameters.
Well, I mean, it's like the outlying district is zoned for agricultural use with,
You couldn't unreasonably regulate agriculture through zoning
Yes.
if it was on a parcel of 5 acres or greater.
Yes.
That is now altered to 2 acres
By
or
the
greater.
state.
By the state.
Didn't we just do some of that in our
we
own
had
revisions?
talked about it.
Oh, okay. We
Yes.
didn't do it?
I remember the
Oh, okay.
discussion, yeah.
I remember the discussion too, yeah. And
But-
we were all for it.
Anyways, they wanted to get that on the May meeting,
Yeah, okay.
so,
Yeah, I don't think anyone here is opposed to that.
Yeah, my support.
excellent.
Yeah, I think
Mine
we were all
too.
for it,
Excellent.
yeah.
Unanimous?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Not officially, but yeah.
I gotta order my barn.
Meeting schedule, March 14th. We have
Stuff.
a lot going on. The Fire Road 16, the public hearing for the zoning articles for the town meeting. We have Unitel.
Yep.
Anything else? No?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I had a question. Do you feel it would be appropriate to maybe advertise the bylaw discussions more than just maybe put those in the ledger, just to get more public input?
We
Just
certainly,
that the CONSCOM is going through there, and they're actually going to reach out to lake associations and things of that nature, so I just didn't know,
I mean, we certainly can. I think we potentially set a precedent if we alter the way we notify. I mean, it's on the town's website. The ad was posted at the town clerk's office a month ago, 2 weeks ago. It's in the Sentinel, the way that we normally advertise our public hearings. We can reach out to the Ledger and tell them that we're doing it and see if they'll put a blurb in somewhere.
Okay. I'm not saying to replace one of the three.
No,
I'm
no,
saying
I don't think, I think you're
just to
saying,
get
yeah.
more- because,
No.
I mean, unless you look at the Sentinel on the day
Sure.
it's posted, you're not going to see it.
No.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the residents are woefully unaware that it's even going on. So I'd
You
like
can
to
send a
just-
letter to the editor, though.
Pardon me?
You can send a letter to the editor.
Right.
That's true.
Okay.
Mentioning it.
Was that
saying-
woefully or willfully?
Both.
Either one. I
Okay.
would choose willfully if it were me.
Then we have our March 28th meeting with Prospect Street and now Highfield Village.
Correct.
I don't see any public comment coming from the public. Is there any more board comment or concern tonight?
So do I need to make a motion that we support or allow or assist in any way for the AgCom to do that? I mean, how is that going to be done? Is that going to be just their chair reaching out to you?
He certainly can. The AgCom can place items on the warrant.
Okay.
And if you have a draft of what you would like it to look like and be changed, submit it as a warrant article.
Okay, and then...
Just submit it to the town manager's office.
And then once they get that completed, they could run it by planning to get
Doesn't even need to come to planning.
endorsement,
No, you just-
right?
Yeah, just
Well,
for fun.
they,
but
yeah, they could ask to get on an agenda.
Well, that would certainly help at town meeting.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as long as they get on an agenda before town meeting, and all he's gonna do is call the office and,
And that's just carried.
what's that?
Just contacting carried?
To get on a town,
Get on the
get on town
warrant?
meeting, yes. On the warrant, he'd send her the language of the article.
Okay,
To get on a meeting, he'd just call the office and we'd find a date that works and
awesome. And the chair does that on his own.
he can do that, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else?
anything else?
Time's up.
I was gonna say, if you've gotta dig that hard, it can't be that important.
No, well, just, I mean, I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that commercial zone down there really needs some more help. I
Yeah,
don't know if
I've
we're
got
gonna
some
fit that
notes
in, but,
on, well,
maybe for next year, but
well, I think, yeah, we've gotta finish, I've got rules and regs to get out to you.
Okay.
For site plans, so we can go over them before town meeting.
just because it's nice and tight up here, you know what I mean? Everybody did a great job on the Village District. And I think that the neighborhoods down there deserve the same kind of treatment, you know what I mean?
I agree, I think the difficulty is that's not the only place there's a commercial zone.
Yep.
But I have some ideas that we could look at, something like form-based zoning. And get away from, it needs to be colonial. It can't be industrial.
Okay.
And get into the way that mass, height, setback, how the buildings play against each other to create the aesthetic and the massing and the spacing that you want. And maybe there's a way that we can do that that'll work. And maybe we just say everything needs to look colonial, and if it's not, go home. But I think that's dangerous too.
there are finer points, as David brought up about articulation. I mean, if you had a mass in brick, right, you'd put a soldier row or something in there to break up the mass. I understand that that's difficult maybe for some people, but it's not really our obligation to, determine how much they can spend and can't spend.
Sure.
Our job is to tell them what it needs to be.
Well, and I think, to be fair, we don't have that. And so it makes it more difficult. And a subjective, what the board determines gets, and I know, and I'm not saying that he was right or wrong forcing that through, but I think that it gets into a weird area.
That was very strange.
I really was unhappy with the way that went. I
Never
don't
would have
feel.
guessed.
I don't feel you should be coming in and strong arming with I'm not going to do what you want to do because I don't have any money, or I'm not going to be able to go into business, or make us feel bad because you don't want to comply. If Highfield Village came in and said, I don't have the money to do that, approve me or not, what are you going to do? You can't just use that as the chip. I deal with planning boards all the time. That would, the fact that, I don't have money to do this, would fly nowhere. Nowhere. So it just bothers me that we tried to help, tried to move their project along, told them everything we were looking for. They said, describe to us what you think it's going to be, what you would like to see. We described it. And then there was zero movement. So strong arming, trying to make us feel sympathetic. You're not going to make me feel sympathetic about that. Sorry.
I don't disagree. I didn't like his wording, but he didn't say anything different than he said when we said that we would approve it and then later on review. That's what he told us. He says, I doubt it, but okay.
Well, and again, and the fact that, like with the painting, I persisted, I didn't, and I appreciate your support. I think everybody voted aye to have it go to the Board of Selectmen, but it ended up with a positive result. I think we could have addressed it earlier, and again, draw your line in the sand then.
Do you think the outcome would have been different?
I think
Possibly. I don't know. We can't go back in time. Honestly, after the last meeting and knowing it was coming up under the guys, I think
we had no information.
It didn't surprise me what happened here tonight. I'll tell you that.
No, well, it didn't surprise, no, that attitude never changed on their side, for certain. But I definitely, I think I would have, if we had taken an action earlier, something that I could have stood on, I would have felt better about it, you know what I mean? That's all.
I felt our action was, everything's okay with your project, except the elevation, do something about it. That was the action. And they did nothing. So I thought it was clear as day they're going to get denied if they didn't do something about their elevation.
We gave them approval, and then we gave them
conditional approval.
I thought we gave them feedback and guidelines, but anyway.
It's over
That's
now.
all good stuff to think about, thank you.
And I agree, we need to do something about that. I don't know where we are in the scheme of the
bylaw,
our goals for bylaws. I don't know if you have a list of priorities or.
It shifts all the time.
No, it doesn't.
Actually, I did want to ask about that. Do we have the opportunity to go through ourselves and list goals that we have? Because I would like to get through more of the bylaw this year.
We did 3 years ago, right?
Yeah,
Can you offer some constructive criticism?
It's certainly an exercise that can be done.
I know, but
that's certainly something that can be done. I'd suggest that it's probably best done after the election.
Right.
If there's a change in the board, have new members provide input.
We were doing good, and then we had a flood of
stuff
come in.
Yeah, and I think bylaws are tough. It's tough to squeeze them in. We can, the more I work with the rules and regs, the more I realize they need some pretty big work too.
Possibly add a meeting.
We tried that.
And again, I know we meet, the thing is I think we meet less on average over the course of the year because a lot of the holidays fall on Mondays and things of that nature. So maybe over the winter when it's just add a meeting devoted to to bylaw discussions, and then, obviously put some of those smaller A&Rs or whatever.
Matt and I both remember the same conversation.
Okay.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, probably.
You gotta get
Is there an opposition to it from us? I mean, if we all agree that it's worth doing, then I don't see why we
I
can't.
think we maybe did one or two of them.
Did we both,
Okay.
were we both on that?
We were both on the
Okay,
same train.
yeah.
Okay, like,
We
I'm-
did try, we
should try it
tried.
again then.
I'm not opposed. I would like to
We should try
do
it.
it. I mean,
special workshop nights?
we could make it a 9 o'clock end time if you want, Damon, but I mean, we don't have more time, so we have to make more time if we want to get more done, you know? I mean, that's just how it works.
I'm laughing because I said the same exact thing.
Okay, well, again, if we're in agreement, then there's no reason we shouldn't
Just have
pursue
to
it.
schedule it and make it public, that's all.
Yeah.
And I think that was back when Marion was our director.
Oh,
But,
yes. Those are-
Adam, how do you feel about that?
I can't say I'm thrilled to come out more Monday nights, but
He's jumping up, look at him.
it's gonna be what it's gonna
Well,
be.
I don't think it can be Monday nights.
No.
This is the problem we had last time. We tried finding a time to do it, and then
Why couldn't we do it on the off week?
because we have other boards, building reuse is Mondays. I don't know if any of you all have other Monday
Building
meetings.
mutes is almost done.
Would it need to be televised
We'll see.
for just the discussions? I mean, if we went to public.
No, nothing needs to be televised.
Right.
Should be,
So it
though.
We
doesn't-
can have workshops.
No, I understand. Well, like we do the bylaw discussions, and now we're going ahead with the public hearings, which I would love to be televised and have the residents' input, but for just the basic discussions and to get the nuts and bolts hammered out, I don't see why we can't meet somewhere
Like the
else
Ritter.
and just do it, right?
That's how we did them last time.
And it's not like we have an abundance of resident input when we discuss the bylaw anyways. I mean, and that's kind of the reason why I wanted to put it in the ledgers, to
Although,
get
Well,
at
make
least
up your
inform
mind. Do you
people.
want people and televised or?
is there any way of telling how many people actually watch it live versus how many people watch it on YouTube? Because there are very few people that watch it on YouTube.
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not sure. how
I
many
don't
people
think they.
watch it
I
at
don't think
10:15 at
Nielsen's
night.
does ratings for local cable access.
Well, yeah, and I looked into that. The issue is you can't, they don't put it on the guide, so you can, like, they don't
It just
list
says
when the
local
meetings are, so you don't,
Yeah,
unless you
gotta
set your recording
fumble
for-
across it.
for this time, you know, it's not on the guide, so people don't know what you're talking about, or when it's
Well,
on,
if
right?
we ended at 8:30, they'd be showing, the last year's polka competition right now.
Right. Oh, man.
Anyways.
Might have a greater draw.
Well, yeah, polka music.
I take my NyQuil on that. That's it.
How about we all go home and think about the extra meeting
Sleep on
thing?
it.
Great.
We'll get back to it in June.
Talk to your wife about it. 'Cause I can hear mine through
I
the.
was gonna say, I can tell you what my wife's
I
answer would
do
be.
what I want when my wife tells me I can, I'll tell you.
Yes. I would entertain the idea, but
Yeah, the question will be the night, then you can pick.
You haven't been married that long, get out of it.
Give it time.
She doesn't want me to come home.
Yeah.
all right. Are we good for tonight? Any more?
Yes.
I'm good.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, folks.
Who gets this?
Mac, you want to go get some Chinese?
Where? Where?
It's 2 meetings in a row, you guys didn't mention them.
He did mention it. I just mentioned it quietly.